I'm pregnant by my boss, and my husband doesn't know.
Then tell him now.
This unit was never replaced. Then someone was paid for work that never happened.
Sean Cox was 38, a senior facilities maintenance supervisor at Ridgewell Medical Technologies in Columbus, Ohio. Most people believed he was just another quiet blue-collar man who fixed broken air conditioners, drove an aging Ford F-150, packed homemade sandwiches, and never dreamed beyond his next paycheck. What they didn't know was that Sean had spent years learning that silence revealed far more than anger ever could. When he returned to headquarters for the encrypted maintenance tablet, he'd forgotten he heard his wife laugh behind a conference room door. Then came the words that stopped him cold. "I'm pregnant by my boss, and my husband doesn't know." Sean slowly pushed the door open, the cold brass handle pressing into his palm, as every face inside turned toward him. If you're watching from somewhere in the world today, let us know your country and your local time in the comments. I always enjoy seeing where these stories travel. And if you love slow-burning stories filled with suspense, unexpected twists, and justice earned through patience rather than luck, don't forget to subscribe. Tomorrow's story might be the one you never see coming. Sean never flinched. For one long second, nobody inside the conference room breathed. Cora's smile disappeared first. The coffee mug in her hand stopped halfway to her lips. Across the polished walnut table, Melissa Harper, another marketing coordinator, slowly lowered her eyes to the notebook in front of her, as if pretending she had suddenly become fascinated by handwritten meeting notes. Sean looked from one woman to the other. His face revealed nothing. Not anger, not disbelief, not heartbreak, only stillness. "I left my maintenance tablet in Building C," he said evenly. "Security said someone brought it up here." His voice sounded exactly the same as it had that morning when he'd reminded Emma to wear her jacket before school. Cora blinked twice. "Oh, I thought you were already home." "I was." He stepped farther into the room. His encrypted maintenance tablet rested near the projector, exactly where he'd forgotten it after an emergency ventilation meeting earlier that afternoon. Sean walked toward it without rushing. His work boots echoed softly against the hardwood floor. Nobody spoke. He picked up the tablet, checked that its security seal remained intact, then looked briefly at Cora. "I'll see you tonight." Nothing more. No accusation, no question, no raised voice. Then he turned and walked out. The conference room door clicked shut behind him. Only after he disappeared down the hallway did anyone inside finally exhale. Sean crossed the employee parking garage beneath Ridgewell Medical Technologies with the same measured pace he'd used for years. Outside, the late October air carried the sharp scent of rain. He unlocked his faded blue Ford F-150. The truck had over 220,000 miles on it. The driver's seat had a small tear near the left shoulder. Emma had once tried to patch it with silver duct tape when she was 8 because she thought it looked sad. Sean never removed it. He climbed inside, closed the door, sat quietly. The steering wheel felt unusually cold beneath his hands. His heartbeat remained steady. Years earlier, during his final deployment with the U.S. Army Logistics Corps, an older master sergeant had repeated the same lesson after every emergency. "The first man who loses control usually loses the battle." Sean had never forgotten it. He started the engine. The windshield wipers swept away the first drops of rain as he pulled onto Interstate 670 toward home. His mind refused to replay the sentence he'd just heard. Instead, it began assembling facts. Dates, times, small details, patterns. That was simply how his brain worked. 15 years. That was how long he and Cora had been married. He remembered their first apartment near German Village, 600 square feet, leaking pipes, second-hand furniture, a mattress lying directly on the floor because buying a bed frame had seemed extravagant. Back then, neither of them cared. Cora had laughed while eating microwave macaroni at midnight because neither of them could afford takeout. Sean had worked overtime repairing commercial refrigeration systems. She had been finishing college. Every extra dollar he earned had gone toward tuition. He never regretted it. When Ridgewell hired Cora into the marketing department, Sean celebrated harder than she did. He bought a grocery store cake. Chocolate. Her favorite. Years later, when Ridgewell offered Sean a management track promotion requiring constant travel across Ohio, he declined. Emma had just been born. Somebody needed to be home. Cora's career was taking off. Sean chose stability instead. He never mentioned the sacrifice again. The rain intensified. Traffic slowed. Sean's thoughts drifted to the last 8 months. Small things, tiny things, almost invisible. At first, Cora began staying late every Thursday, then every Tuesday, eventually nearly every evening. She always had explanations: marketing campaign, client dinner, executive presentation, weekend conference. Sean believed her. Why wouldn't he? Trust wasn't something he measured daily. It simply existed, until recently. About 6 months earlier, he'd noticed a bracelet, white gold, tiny diamonds, far more expensive than anything either of them usually bought. Performance bonus, she'd explained. He accepted the answer. 3 weeks later came another surprise, a Louis Vuitton handbag. She claimed she'd won it during a charity auction. Sean remembered thinking it seemed unusually generous for a corporate fundraiser. Still, he said nothing. Not because he didn't notice, because suspicion without evidence solved nothing. Then came the credit card statement. One charge, $892. A restaurant inside the Levesque Tower downtown. Only 2 names appeared on the reservation receipt. The charge vanished before the monthly statement arrived. Sean only noticed because their online banking briefly synchronized incorrectly one Sunday morning. He never mentioned it. Instead, he took a screenshot, saved it, forgot about it, or at least pretended to. His truck rolled into the driveway shortly after 6. The small 2-story house looked exactly as it always had. White siding, blue shutters, a basketball hoop above the garage, Emma's bicycle lying on the lawn despite repeated reminders. Home. Emma burst through the front door before Sean reached the porch. "Dad?" She wrapped both arms around him. "You made it." "I always do." She grinned. "I got 96 on my science quiz." Sean smiled. "I'm guessing 4 points were stolen by handwriting." Emma rolled her eyes dramatically. "My teacher says you're impossible." She's probably right. For a few minutes, nothing else mattered. Not conference rooms, not lies, not Gregory Bennett. Only his daughter laughing while trying to beat him inside the house. Dinner consisted of grilled chicken, mashed potatoes, and frozen green beans. Sean cooked. Emma set the table. The 3rd plate remained empty. 7 o'clock. No Cora. 7:30. Still nothing. At 7:48 p.m., Sean's phone buzzed. "Working late. Big presentation tomorrow. Don't wait up." Cora Sean stared at the message. No anger. Only observation. He opened his phone's calendar. October 28th. Working late. He entered it. Then he opened another application. A secure folder protected by military-grade encryption. Inside were simple entries. Nothing emotional. Nothing dramatic. Just facts. October 3rd. Dinner canceled. October 9th. Home after midnight. October 15th. Jewelry. October 20th. Executive parking garage. October 24th. Hotel receipt found in jacket pocket. October 28th. Working late. He closed the folder. After Emma went upstairs to finish homework, Sean entered the small workshop attached to the garage. Metal shelves lined one wall. Power tools hung neatly above an old wooden workbench. Everything had its place. He unlocked a gray filing cabinet. Inside were maintenance reports from Ridgewell, inspection logs, vendor invoices, equipment certifications. Most people would have found them painfully boring. Sean found patterns. 3 months earlier, while replacing rooftop ventilation systems, he'd noticed something strange. According to Ridgewell's official maintenance database, Building 7 had received 4 brand-new industrial air handling units. Each unit cost nearly $200,000. Sean had personally serviced Building 7 every month for the last 4 years. Those units didn't exist. The old machines were still sitting on the roof. Same serial numbers, same dents, same faded manufacturer stickers. Someone had approved payment for equipment that had never been installed. At first, Sean assumed it was a clerical error. Then another appeared. Then another. Eventually dozens. He pulled one invoice from the folder. Vendor: Midwest Integrated Mechanical Solutions. Project value $2,480,000. Status completed. Sean quietly shook his head. He knew every mechanical room inside Ridgewell. Nothing matching that project had ever been built. He turned to the final approval page. One electronic signature authorized the payment. Gregory Bennett. Sean studied the name for several silent seconds. Then he reached for another invoice. And another. The same signature appeared again. And again. Outside rain tapped softly against the garage window. Inside, Sean slowly realized the sentence he'd overheard that afternoon might not be the biggest lie surrounding Gregory Bennett. It might simply be the easiest one to prove. Sean slept less than 4 hours that night. Not because his mind raced. It didn't. His thoughts moved with the same deliberate rhythm that had guided him through military supply convoys years earlier. One question led to another. Every answer demanded proof. Emotion had no place in the process. At 5:30 the next morning, he was already in the garage workshop with a mug of black coffee cooling beside an open laptop. The invoices lay arranged across the workbench in neat rows. Project dates, vendor names, approval numbers, electronic signatures. He compared each document against maintenance logs stored on his encrypted tablet. The first discrepancy had bothered him 3 months ago. Now it looked like the first loose thread in an expensive suit. Building 7. Invoice number RM71482. Replacement of 4 industrial air handling units. Total approved payment $480,000. Sean zoomed in on the attached installation photographs. His eyes narrowed. The pictures were authentic, just not current. The shadows fell differently. The safety markings on the walls were painted in Ridgewell's old color scheme, replaced almost 2 years earlier. Someone had submitted archived photographs as evidence of brand new construction. That wasn't a clerical mistake. That was intentional. He quietly created another folder, Evidence. Inside it, he copied every supporting document. Nothing was edited, nothing renamed. Every original timestamp remained intact. His Army training had taught him that evidence lost its value the moment someone questioned its integrity. He would give no one that opportunity. By 7:30, Sean arrived at Ridgewell Medical Technologies. The headquarters stretched across several interconnected buildings on the northeast side of Columbus. Glass, steel, polished landscaping. Visitors admired the architecture. Sean knew every utility tunnel beneath it. He parked beside the maintenance warehouse instead of the executive garage. Same parking spot. Same routine. He greeted the security guard with his usual smile. "Morning, Frank." "Morning, Sean." Nothing unusual. Nothing suspicious. That was exactly how Sean wanted it. Inside the maintenance office, work orders were already waiting. 2 malfunctioning rooftop sensors, a leaking chilled water valve, emergency lighting inspection in Building 4. Sean completed each assignment without rushing. He had learned something else in the Army. The quickest way to attract attention was to suddenly behave differently. Routine was camouflage. Around 10 that morning, his radio crackled. "Sean, go ahead. Thomas Reed wants to see you upstairs." Sean paused. Thomas Reed rarely contacted maintenance directly. As Director of Corporate Compliance, Thomas spent most days reviewing contracts, internal policies, and regulatory audits. Maintenance supervisors weren't normally invited into his office. Sean rode the elevator to the 4th floor. Thomas's assistant quietly waved him inside. The compliance director looked older than his 53 years. Gray hair, thin glasses. A stack of unopened folders occupied nearly half his desk. Close the door. Sean did. Thomas waited several seconds before speaking. I heard you requested archived maintenance certifications. Sean answered honestly. I did. For what reason? I'm verifying equipment histories. Thomas studied him carefully. His expression revealed neither approval nor concern, only caution. You've been requesting quite a few records lately. I have. Another silence settled between them. Finally, Thomas leaned back. Tell me something. Sean waited. What exactly are you looking for? Sean considered the question, then chose his words carefully. The truth. Thomas gave the faintest smile. That's usually more dangerous than people expect. Sean didn't respond. Thomas opened a drawer and removed a thin manila envelope. I shouldn't be giving you this. He slid it across the desk. Sean looked inside. Vendor registration, business licenses, insurance certificates. Every company listed on the suspicious invoices. At first glance, everything appeared legitimate, until Sean noticed the addresses. 3 contractors supposedly operating multi-million-dollar construction businesses all shared the same office suite in downtown Cincinnati. Suite 804, same building, same mailing address, different companies. Sean looked up. Thomas quietly said, I've checked. And Suite 804 has been vacant for almost 18 months. Neither man spoke. The air conditioner hummed softly overhead. Finally, Thomas stood and walked toward the office window overlooking the employee parking lot. When you've worked compliance long enough, he said quietly, you learn the difference between mistakes and patterns. Sean joined him at the window. What do you think this is? Thomas answered without turning around. I think someone very important has been stealing from this company for years. Back downstairs, Sean couldn't stop thinking about the envelope. The fake vendors weren't random. Neither were the non-existent mechanical projects. Millions of dollars had disappeared through construction contracts, and every approval eventually led back to one executive, Gregory Bennett. Sean had expected carelessness. Instead, he found organization. Someone had built an entire financial pipeline that required accountants, lawyers, approvals, probably executives beyond Gregory himself. Which meant one thing. Sean was no longer investigating an affair. He had stumbled into something far larger. That afternoon, he drove across downtown Columbus instead of heading home. His destination wasn't listed in Ridgewell's employee directory. Lawson & Pierce Employment Law, a 6-story brick office building near Capitol Square. Sean had called earlier that morning. Rebecca Lawson agreed to meet him during lunch. Her office reflected its owner. Minimal furniture, organized bookshelves, no unnecessary decoration. Rebecca herself appeared calm, composed, and impossible to intimidate. She listened without interrupting while Sean explained everything. Not once did he mention Cora's confession. Instead, he focused entirely on maintenance records, invoices, vendor registrations, approval chains. When he finished, Rebecca folded her hands. Have you copied company documents? No. Good. I photographed documents I had authorized access to. Excellent. I've modified nothing. Even better. She nodded slowly. You've already avoided the mistake most people make. Sean waited. They panic. Rebecca leaned forward. They email everyone. They accuse supervisors. They post online. They try becoming heroes. Sean remained silent. Rebecca continued. That destroys investigations. She picked up a yellow legal pad. From this point forward, every piece of evidence matters less than how you obtained it. She began writing. Chain of custody, authorized access, original timestamps, independent verification, witnesses. You understand these? Sean nodded. I do. Good. Because if this reaches federal investigators, defense attorneys won't attack the facts first. They'll attack you. Sean had expected that answer. Rebecca continued, "If Gregory Bennett or anyone else learns you're asking questions before investigators are ready." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Sean understood. Rebecca looked directly at him. "So here's my advice. I'm listening. Keep doing your job. Say nothing. Collect only what you're legally allowed to access. Never access files outside your authorization. Never warn anyone. And never assume the affair and the financial fraud are unrelated." Sean looked up. "You think they're connected?" Rebecca answered carefully. "I don't know. But powerful people rarely compartmentalize misconduct." Driving home, Sean replayed her final sentence. Powerful people rarely compartmentalize misconduct. Gregory Bennett had promised Cora wealth, luxury, a different future. If Gregory stole millions from Ridgewell, those promises suddenly sounded much easier to finance. 3 evenings later, Sean stayed late replacing a faulty pressure sensor inside Building 8. Most employees had already left. The executive wing appeared almost empty. As he rolled his maintenance cart down a quiet hallway, movement caught his attention. Gregory Bennett stepped from a private elevator carrying a slim black briefcase. Instead of walking toward the executive offices, Gregory headed deeper into the building, toward records and archives. Sean checked his watch. 8:47 p.m. Archives officially closed at 6. No maintenance requests had been issued there. Gregory unlocked the restricted door using his executive access badge, then disappeared inside. Sean continued walking, never looking back, never slowing down. 10 minutes later, after completing his repair, he quietly logged into the maintenance security portal. Every after-hours mechanical access automatically triggered hallway camera recordings. He searched the timestamp. 8:47 p.m. Camera A17. Gregory entering archives. Then, 8:58 p.m. Another clip. Gregory leaving. The briefcase looked noticeably thicker than before. Sean downloaded nothing. Instead, following Rebecca's instructions, he documented the camera number, timestamp, and archive reference. Evidence remained where it belonged, untouched. He closed the system. As he prepared to leave, one final notification appeared on his screen. Archive security alert. After-hours document retrieval authorized by executive override. Authorizing Executive Gregory Bennett. Sean stared at the notification for several seconds. Whatever Gregory had removed from that archive, he hadn't wanted anyone else to see it. Sean left Ridgewell just after 6 that evening, but Gregory Bennett never left his thoughts. The image of the executive walking into the restricted archives with a nearly empty briefcase and leaving with one that appeared full replayed in Sean's mind over and over. By itself, it proved nothing. Executives handled confidential documents every day. But combined with the fake vendor registrations, the fabricated maintenance invoices, and Gregory's electronic approvals, it added another carefully documented piece to a puzzle that was growing larger with every passing day. Sean had no intention of forcing the pieces together too soon. Rebecca Lawson's advice echoed in his memory. Stay patient. Collect facts. Never chase conclusions before the evidence reaches them first. That evening, he followed his normal routine. Emma was sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by colored pencils and science worksheets, when he walked through the front door. "Dad, can you help me build a volcano for school?" Sean smiled. "A volcano? It has to erupt. I think we can manage that." For the next hour, nothing existed except cardboard glue newspaper strips and baking soda. Emma laughed every time the papier-mâché collapsed before drying. "You always know how to fix everything," she said. Sean looked at the unfinished volcano. "Not everything." Emma didn't notice the quiet sadness behind the answer. She was too busy trying to keep the cardboard mountain from falling apart. Sean preferred it that way. Children deserved childhood, not adult problems. Cora arrived home shortly after 8. She stepped through the front door carrying another expensive designer handbag Sean had never seen before. Her perfume filled the hallway before she spoke. "Sorry I'm late." Sean looked up from washing dinner dishes. "No problem. I had another executive strategy meeting." "I'm sure you did." She hesitated for a fraction of a second. The answer sounded normal. Almost too normal. She had expected questions. Instead, she found Sean quietly drying plates. Emma ran over and hugged her. "Mom-Dad helped me make a volcano." Cora forced a smile. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." Sean watched his wife from the corner of his eye. She seemed distracted, not guilty. Distracted. Every few minutes, she glanced toward her phone, resting face down on the kitchen counter. Finally, the screen vibrated. She picked it up immediately. "I have to answer this." She disappeared into the backyard. Sean continued drying dishes. 5 minutes later, she returned. "Gregory wants revisions on tomorrow's presentation." Sean simply nodded. "Busy week." "It is." Again, nothing more. No accusations, no emotional confrontation. Cora relaxed almost visibly. She had begun convincing herself that Sean truly hadn't heard the entire conversation in the conference room. The more calmly he behaved, the safer she felt. Sean understood that. People revealed more when they believed they were no longer in danger. The following morning began like every other weekday. Sean made pancakes before work. Emma complained they weren't shaped like dinosaurs. Sean deliberately made the next one look even worse. Emma laughed so hard orange juice nearly came out of her nose. Cora barely looked up from her phone. "I'm leaving early," she announced. "Executive breakfast." Sean poured coffee into his travel mug. "Drive safely." She kissed Emma goodbye. Sean noticed she didn't kiss him. Not unusual anymore. He simply filed away another observation. Nothing emotional, just another date, another pattern. At Ridgewell, Sean spent the morning replacing emergency lighting batteries in Building 2. By noon, he had climbed enough ladders to make his shoulders ache. Maintenance work was physically exhausting. That suited him. It left little room for unnecessary thinking. As he loaded old batteries onto a cart, another maintenance technician approached. His name was Carl Jensen. Carl lowered his voice. "You hear the gossip?" Sean shrugged. "Depends which gossip." "Gregory." Sean continued tightening a toolbox latch. "What about him?" Carl looked around to make sure nobody else was nearby. "They say he's buying another house." "Good for him." "Not just any house." Carl grinned. $6 million outside Dublin. Sean didn't react. Carl continued anyway. "I don't know how these executives afford everything." Sean quietly asked. "Sometimes they can." Carl laughed. "Sometimes." Then he walked away. Sean remained standing beside the maintenance cart. $6 million. That alone meant nothing. Gregory earned an executive salary, bonuses, stock options, investments. Expensive homes weren't unusual. But Sean had learned something during his years managing maintenance budgets. Large spending often accelerated when people believed no one was watching. After lunch, Sean returned to Building 7, the same building connected to the non-existent air handling units. He climbed onto the roof carrying a thermal inspection camera. Officially, he was checking heat loss around ductwork. Unofficially, he wanted another look at the mechanical equipment. Every serial number matched the photographs he'd already taken months earlier. Nothing had changed. 4 aging industrial units still sat exactly where they always had. Paint peeling, surface rust, manufacturer plates scratched but readable. Sean photographed every serial number again. He included that morning's newspaper beside one unit to establish the date. Another habit learned from military investigations: always anchor evidence in time. Near the edge of the roof stood an older security camera aimed toward the maintenance access ladder. Sean remembered replacing its network cable last spring. Curious, he climbed down and checked the maintenance sticker attached to the housing. Last serviced 9 months ago. According to Ridgewell's payment records, however, that exact camera system had supposedly been replaced entirely 6 weeks earlier. Replacement cost $48,000. Sean looked up at the weathered housing. The faded manufacturer logo had been discontinued 5 years ago. There was no replacement, only another invoice, another lie. He photographed the camera, then its serial number, then the maintenance sticker. Every image automatically synchronized to his encrypted archive. That afternoon, Rebecca Lawson called. Sean stepped outside before answering. "Everything all right?" "For now," she replied. "I've started researching Midwest Integrated Mechanical Solutions." "The contractor, pardon?" "Yes." Sean waited. Rebecca continued. "The company exists on paper, but it has no active employees. No payroll filings. No state construction licenses. No OSHA registrations." Sean wasn't surprised. "What does that mean?" "It means someone created a shell company." She paused. "And Sean—" "Yes. There are 2 more companies registered by the same incorporator." Sean immediately thought of Thomas Reed's envelope. "The same address. The exact same suite." Sean looked across the employee parking lot. Rain clouds were gathering again over Columbus. "Can you connect them to Gregory?" "Not yet," Rebecca answered carefully. "But shell companies rarely exist without someone powerful benefiting from them." Sean thanked her before ending the call. He didn't need encouragement. He needed patience. Later that evening, after most employees had gone home, Sean stopped by the maintenance records room to return inspection binders. As he placed them back on the shelf, he heard footsteps approaching. Thomas Reed appeared in the doorway. "You have a minute?" Sean nodded. Thomas closed the door. "I checked something else." Sean waited. "The archive Gregory entered 3 nights ago. And—" Thomas lowered his voice. "Those rooms store original contractor agreements." Sean felt a chill despite the warm room. "What was removed?" "I don't know." "The checkout log was deleted." Sean stared at him. "Deleted?" Thomas nodded once. "I've worked here 21 years. I've never seen an archive retrieval log disappear." Neither man spoke for several seconds. Finally, Thomas sighed. "Whoever erased it had administrator privileges." Sean quietly asked, "Can deleted logs be recovered?" Thomas looked toward the hallway before answering. "Usually. But not always." Sean noticed something unusual. For the first time since they'd met, Thomas looked genuinely worried. "If someone is willing to erase audit records," Thomas said softly, "they're no longer protecting mistakes. They're protecting crimes." Sean absorbed the words without responding. As he left the records room, he realized the investigation had entered a different stage. The missing invoices had raised questions. The fake contractors suggested fraud. But erased audit trails meant someone inside Ridgewell had begun destroying evidence. And people only destroyed evidence when they feared the truth was getting dangerously close. Sean arrived at Rebecca Lawson's office carrying nothing but a slim notebook. He intentionally left every electronic device related to Ridgewell locked inside a fireproof safe in his garage. Rebecca had made one principle absolutely clear during their previous meeting. Never transport evidence unless there's a legal reason. Sean intended to follow every instruction precisely. Rebecca welcomed him into the conference room with 2 cups of coffee already waiting. "I've been busy," she said. "So have I." She opened a folder containing corporate registration records, state filings, and property documents. "I spent the last 4 days tracing Midwest Integrated Mechanical Solutions." Sean waited. "It officially exists." "I expected that. But every dollar flowing into the company disappears almost immediately." She slid several highlighted pages across the table. "The money moves through 3 limited liability companies." Sean recognized 2 names immediately. Northbridge Commercial Services, Hamilton Infrastructure Consulting. The third company was unfamiliar, Redstone Asset Holdings. Rebecca pointed to the ownership section. Different companies? Different mailing addresses? Different registered agents? She paused before tapping one page with her pen. But all three ultimately pay consulting fees to the same investment partnership. Sean studied the documents. And who owns the partnership? We don't know yet. But whoever structured this understood corporate law extremely well. Sean nodded slowly. So they built layers. Exactly. Rebecca leaned back. The purpose isn't just stealing money. It's making ownership difficult to prove. She watched Sean carefully. Which tells me this wasn't created overnight. No. This could have taken years. Sean looked out this office window toward downtown Columbus. The maintenance invoices go back at least 3 years. Rebecca quietly answered. Then the fraud probably goes back even farther. Before leaving, Rebecca handed Sean a fresh legal notebook. From now on, document every observation here. No loose paper. No sticky notes. No phone notes. She opened the first page. Every entry starts with the date. Every observation stays factual. No opinions. No guesses. No assumptions. Sean appreciated the simplicity. Military field reports followed almost identical rules. What about Cora? Rebecca met his eyes. You still haven't confronted her. No. Good. She spoke carefully. Until you know exactly what's happening, confrontation creates more problems than solutions. Sean slipped the notebook into his jacket. I understand. Rebecca hesitated. And Sean? Yes. If Gregory Bennett is willing to manipulate financial records, don't assume his personal relationships are honest either. The sentence stayed with Sean the entire drive home. Life inside the Cox household continued almost unchanged. That was exactly what Sean wanted. Emma practiced multiplication at the kitchen table. Sean grilled hamburgers on the back patio. Cora arrived home just before sunset wearing a cream-colored designer coat Sean had never seen before. She looked unusually cheerful. Guess what? Emma looked up first. What? My department's getting invited to the executive holiday retreat. Emma smiled politely, without understanding what that meant. Sean flipped another hamburger. Congratulations. Cora seemed almost disappointed by his calm reaction. It's a pretty exclusive event. I'm sure it is. There'll be executives from all over the company. Sean nodded once. Sounds important. She watched him for another second. No jealousy, no questions, no curiosity. Nothing. Sean simply continued cooking dinner. Inside, however, another small detail found its place inside the growing timeline. Executive holiday retreat. Another opportunity for Gregory. Another opportunity for documentation. 3 days later, Sean received a maintenance request from the executive floor. Conference room 12. Projector malfunction. He gathered his toolbox and headed upstairs. The room was empty when he arrived, or so he thought. As he removed the projector, housing voices echoed faintly from the adjoining executive lounge. The connecting door had not fully closed. Sean wasn't trying to listen. He simply couldn't avoid hearing them. Gregory Bennett spoke first. The board meeting is next month. Another male voice answered. We're running out of time. Gregory lowered his voice. The audit won't reach facilities. It already has. No. I made sure compliance only received summaries. Sean froze without moving. The second man sounded nervous. What about Thomas Reed? He asks too many questions. Gregory laughed softly. He'll retire before anything reaches him. Sean carefully tightened another screw inside the projector housing. Every movement remained deliberate. Every sound appeared consistent with routine maintenance. The conversation continued. The archive retrieval. It's handled. No copies. None that matter. Sean mentally recorded every sentence. He would never claim to remember exact wording later. Instead, he would immediately write down everything while the memory remained fresh. That made testimony stronger. Guessing destroyed credibility. After another minute, the executive lounge fell silent. Sean finished replacing the faulty projector cable, collected his tools, left without ever looking toward the partially open door. He stopped inside an empty maintenance closet before returning downstairs. Opening Rebecca's notebook, he carefully recorded November 6th, Conference Room 12, approximately 2:18 p.m. Voices identified visually and audibly as Gregory Bennett and unidentified male executive. Discussion referenced upcoming board meeting compliance summaries. Thomas Reed archive retrieval, recorded immediately following incident. No opinions, no conclusions, only facts. Sean closed the notebook. Later that afternoon, Thomas Reed unexpectedly appeared in the maintenance warehouse. I need 5 minutes. Sean invited him into a storage room. Thomas closed the door. I've got bad news. Sean remained silent. The internal auditors requested original contractor files yesterday. And they're gone. Sean looked directly at him. Gone. Entire boxes. Missing. Thomas rubbed both hands across his face. The archive shelves aren't empty. They've been replaced with duplicate binders. Sean understood immediately. Someone hadn't simply removed evidence. Someone had staged the archive to appear untouched. Does anyone else know? Thomas shook his head. Not yet. What are you going to do? Thomas answered honestly. I don't know. Sean studied the older man. For the first time, Thomas looked genuinely frightened. Not for himself, for the company. I spent 21 years believing compliance protected Ridgewell. Thomas stared at the concrete floor. I'm beginning to think compliance was only shown what someone wanted us to see. Sean placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. We'll stay with the facts. Thomas nodded slowly. The facts. That evening, Sean returned home to find Emma asleep on the living room couch with a book resting across her chest. He carefully carried her upstairs without waking her. As he tucked the blanket around her shoulders, she murmured sleepily, Love you, Dad. I love you too. Downstairs, Cora sat alone on the patio, scrolling through her phone. Sean stepped outside carrying 2 mugs of hot tea. He placed one beside her. She looked surprised. Thanks. Neither of them spoke for several minutes. Finally, Cora broke the silence. You've been different lately. Sean looked toward the dark backyard. Have I? You don't ask where I've been anymore. I trust people to make their own choices. The answer unsettled her. She searched his face for anger, for suspicion, for resentment. Instead, she found only calm. A calm so complete it became almost impossible to understand. After another long silence, she quietly asked, Are you happy, Sean? He thought carefully before answering. I've learned happiness isn't something you find. It's something you protect. Cora frowned slightly, unsure what he meant. Before she could ask another question, her phone vibrated. The screen lit up. Gregory Bennett. She instinctively turned the phone face down. Sean noticed. He said nothing. Instead, he sipped his tea while mentally recording one more small fact. People rarely hide ordinary conversations, only the ones they fear someone else might hear. Near midnight, long after everyone else had gone to bed, Sean opened Rebecca's notebook one final time. At the bottom of the page, he wrote a single sentence. The pattern is becoming organized enough that coincidence is no longer a reasonable explanation. Then he closed the notebook, locked it inside the safe beside every other carefully preserved record. and quietly wondered how much longer Gregory Bennett believed he was still the only man collecting evidence. Monday morning began with an email that seemed completely ordinary. Subject: mandatory executive facilities walkthrough. Sean received similar requests several times each year whenever senior leadership wanted to inspect renovation projects before board meetings. As senior facilities maintenance supervisor, he was responsible for answering technical questions and documenting any issues executives noticed. The walkthrough would begin at 10 o'clock. Gregory Bennett would lead it personally. Sean read the email twice before closing it. He neither welcomed nor dreaded the meeting. It simply presented another opportunity to observe. Nothing more. By 9:55 a.m., 12 people gathered in the lobby of Building 1. Department heads, project managers, an architect, 2 outside consultants. Sean stood near the back, wearing his Navy Ridgewell maintenance jacket, carrying a digital inspection tablet. Gregory Bennett entered exactly on time. His charcoal suit looked immaculate. Expensive watch, perfect smile. The kind of confidence that came naturally to people accustomed to controlling every room they entered. "Good morning, everyone." Several executives greeted him warmly. Gregory's eyes briefly landed on Sean, only for a second. Then they moved on. If Gregory recognized him as Cora's husband, he showed no sign. Sean preferred it that way. The tour began. For nearly an hour, Gregory discussed future expansion plans, new laboratories, research partnerships, investor presentations. Sean answered technical questions whenever construction schedules or mechanical systems came up. His responses remained brief, professional, precise. Nothing about his behavior suggested he suspected anything. Near the end of the walkthrough, Gregory stopped beside a large architectural model displayed inside the executive lobby. "We're investing nearly $80 million into this campus over the next 5 years. The executives nodded approvingly. Gregory smiled. "Facilities makes everything possible." Then, unexpectedly, he looked directly at Sean. "Your department deserves recognition." Several executives turned toward Sean. Gregory continued. "Sean's team consistently delivers outstanding work." Polite applause followed. Sean simply nodded. "Thank you." That was all. Inside, however, something felt wrong. Powerful people rarely offered compliments without purpose. After the meeting concluded, Gregory approached him privately. "Walk with me." Sean fell into step beside him. They moved through a quiet, executive hallway overlooking the central courtyard. "I've heard good things about you," Sean answered calmly. "I appreciate that." "You've been here how long?" 12 years. "And before that?" "Army logistics." Gregory smiled. "Explains your attention to detail." Sean noticed the wording immediately. Attention to detail. Not hard work, not leadership, detail. Gregory stopped beside the window. "We're considering restructuring facilities next year." Sean waited. "I like promoting dependable people." "I appreciate the confidence." Gregory reached into his jacket and handed Sean a business card. "My direct number. If you're ever thinking about advancing your career—" He let the sentence trail away. Sean accepted the card. "I'll keep it." Gregory smiled once more. "I hope you do." Then he walked away. Sean remained standing in the hallway for several seconds. The conversation lasted less than 3 minutes. Yet something about it felt calculated. Gregory wasn't building a relationship, he was measuring one. During lunch, Sean quietly visited Thomas Reed. He described the conversation exactly as it happened. Nothing added, nothing omitted. Thomas frowned. "He gave you his private number?" "Yes." "That's unusual." "I thought so." Thomas leaned back. "Gregory almost never deals directly with maintenance supervisors. What do you think he wants?" Thomas answered honestly. I don't know. But when executives suddenly become friendly, he didn't finish. Sean understood. Sometimes friendliness was recruitment. Sometimes it was surveillance. Sometimes it was both. That evening, Sean received another surprise. As he pulled into his driveway, a black luxury SUV slowed briefly near the mailbox before continuing down the street. He recognized the vehicle immediately. One of Ridgewell's executive fleet SUVs, the same model Gregory used for company events. Sean watched until it disappeared around the corner. Perhaps it had simply taken a wrong turn. Perhaps not. He didn't speculate. He only noted the time. 6:41 p.m. Inside the house, Cora appeared unusually energetic. You'll never believe what happened. Sean hung his jacket by the door. What? Gregory recommended me for senior marketing director. Sean looked at her. Congratulations. It comes with a huge raise. I'm happy for you. She searched his face again. Still no jealousy. Still no questions. She almost seemed frustrated by his composure. It's a major promotion. I'm sure you've worked hard. She smiled uncertainly. Yes. Sean quietly wondered whether Gregory recommended promotions as generously as he approved non-existent construction projects. He kept the thought to himself. 2 days later, Thomas Reed called Sean just after sunset. I need you to meet me. Where? Not the office. Thomas named a small public park along the Scioto River. Sean arrived 15 minutes later. Thomas sat alone on a bench overlooking the water. He looked exhausted. I found something. Sean sat beside him. Thomas removed a sealed envelope. I copied these before they disappeared. Inside were board committee summaries, capital expenditure approvals, construction oversight reports. Every page carried signatures from senior executives. Sean examined them carefully. One signature appeared repeatedly beneath Gregory Bennett's. Board Finance Committee Chair, Margaret Holloway. Sean recognized the name. She served on Ridgewell's board of directors. Thomas spoke quietly. I don't know whether she's involved. But every major payment required both signatures. Sean nodded. So Gregory couldn't move millions alone. Exactly. Thomas stared across the river. I kept hoping this was one dishonest executive. And now, Thomas sighed, I'm afraid the circle may be much larger. Sean carefully returned every page. What are you going to do with these? I've already made certified copies. The originals go back where I found them. Sean approved. Again, preserving the chain of custody mattered more than dramatic action. Friday morning brought another unexpected development. Sean was replacing damaged ceiling tiles near human resources when his phone vibrated. Unknown number. He answered. Sean Cox. A familiar voice replied. This is Detective Michael Foster with Columbus Financial Crimes. Sean's expression remained unchanged. How can I help you? I'd like to speak with you. Regarding? I'd rather discuss that in person. Sean considered the request. When? This afternoon. 3 o'clock. That works. The detective ended the call. Sean stood silently in the hallway. He had never contacted law enforcement. As far as he knew, Thomas hadn't either. So why was Financial Crimes calling now? The meeting took place inside a modest government office downtown. Detective Michael Foster greeted Sean with a firm handshake. No need to be nervous. I'm not. I didn't think you were. The detective closed the office door. I'll get straight to the point. He opened a thin file. Ridgewell Medical Technologies has appeared during another investigation. Sean remained silent. We're investigating financial transfers involving several medical equipment suppliers. Michael watched Sean carefully. Your name appeared. Sean raised an eyebrow. My name? Only because you approved maintenance completion reports. Sean understood immediately. His department confirmed when legitimate work had actually been completed. If fraudulent projects never happened, his records would expose them. Detective Foster leaned forward. "I'm not accusing you of anything. In fact," he slid a business card across the desk, "I think you may become one of our most important witnesses." Sean didn't touch the card yet. "What makes you think that?" The detective answered calmly. "Because every fraudulent payment we've identified eventually references work performed under your department." Sean absorbed the information without speaking. Michael continued. "I don't need an answer today. But if you discover anything unusual," he gently tapped the business card, "call me before you call anyone else." Sean finally picked it up. As he left the government building 40 minutes later, he realized something fundamental had changed. Until now, he believed he had accidentally uncovered a corporate fraud. Now he knew something different. The investigation had already begun. He simply hadn't realized he had been standing inside it all along. Sean did not call Detective Michael Foster immediately. Instead, he drove home exactly as he always did. He stopped at the same grocery store, bought the same loaf of wheat bread Emma liked, picked up a gallon of milk. Nothing about his routine changed. If anyone happened to be watching him, they would see an ordinary husband returning home after another ordinary workday. Sean intended to keep it that way. Only after Emma had gone upstairs to finish her homework, and Cora disappeared into the bedroom to answer another phone call, did he step onto the back porch. He removed Detective Foster's business card from his wallet. The detective answered on the second ring. "Foster. This is Sean Cox. I'm glad you called." Sean looked across the dark backyard. "You said Ridgewell appeared during another investigation." "It did. What can you tell me?" There was a brief pause. "Not much." Sean expected that answer. "Ongoing investigations have limits." "I understand," Michael continued. "What I can tell you is this. We began following suspicious financial transfers nearly 8 months ago. They eventually led us to medical construction vendors. And those vendors eventually led us toward Ridgewell." Sean listened carefully. "No arrests." "Not yet. No search warrants. Not publicly." The detective's voice remained calm. "But we're getting closer." Sean thought for a moment. "If I discover something significant, I want you to call me. Before discussing it with coworkers. Before confronting executives. And before confronting your wife." Sean's eyes narrowed slightly. "My wife? I know she's employed by Ridgewell," the detective answered matter-of-factly. "I'm not accusing her of anything. But when families become involved in financial investigations," he chose his next words carefully, "emotions often destroy evidence." Sean appreciated the honesty. "They won't. I believe you." The call ended less than 5 minutes later. Sean slipped the business card back into his wallet. Nothing had truly changed. Except now he knew federal-style investigators were already moving behind the scenes. The next morning, Ridgewell felt strangely quiet. Employees still hurried through the hallways. Meetings still filled conference rooms. Maintenance requests continued arriving every few minutes. Yet Sean sensed something subtle beneath the surface. People were whispering more. Executive assistants closed office doors faster. Several managers looked unusually tense. At first he assumed he was imagining it. Then Carl Jensen walked into the maintenance office. "You hear?" Sean looked up from a work order. "Hear what?" Carl lowered his voice. "The finance department canceled tomorrow's vendor review." "Why?" "No idea. They never cancel those." Sean simply nodded. Another small observation. Nothing more. Around 11 that morning, Sean received an unexpected maintenance request from Human Resources. The request involved replacing access control batteries inside the executive records vault. The assignment immediately caught his attention. That vault sat 1 floor below the archives Gregory had visited the previous week. Sean collected fresh batteries and headed downstairs. The records vault contained dozens of secure filing cabinets protected by electronic locks. Replacing backup batteries required opening the control panel mounted beside the entrance. As Sean disconnected the old battery pack, he noticed something unusual. The maintenance display automatically listed every recent override. Normally, only facilities technicians and security administrators appeared. Today's log showed another entry. Executive override. User ID GB204. Timestamp 2:13 a.m. Sean recognized the initials immediately. Gregory Bennett. Why would an executive access a secure records vault at 2 o'clock in the morning, again? The answer didn't matter. The fact did. Sean completed the battery replacement. The system automatically generated a maintenance confirmation. Before closing the panel, he photographed the access log displayed on his authorized maintenance screen. The timestamp became part of the permanent maintenance record. Completely legitimate. Completely authorized. Exactly the kind of evidence Rebecca Lawson had encouraged him to preserve. During lunch, Sean met Thomas Reed inside the company cafeteria. They intentionally sat at separate ends of a long table, before gradually moving closer as other employees left. Thomas looked exhausted. I received another anonymous complaint. Sean quietly asked, about what capital improvements? Sean waited. The letter claims someone has been approving emergency construction projects that never existed. Sean kept his voice steady. Anonymous. Thomas nodded. No return address. No signature. Any documents? Thomas removed a folded sheet from his briefcase. Only one page, typed. No fingerprints visible, no handwritten notes. The final sentence stood alone. Check Building 7. Sean felt his pulse slow rather than quicken. Someone else knew. Someone besides Thomas. Someone besides himself. Did you tell anyone? Thomas shook his head. Only you. Sean carefully returned the letter. Good. Thomas looked puzzled. You expected this. I expected eventually someone else would notice. Thomas leaned forward. Who do you think sent it? Sean answered honestly. I don't know. And I don't want to guess. That afternoon, Sean spent nearly 3 hours inspecting rooftop exhaust systems. The physical work helped him think. Anonymous letters complicated investigations. Sometimes they came from honest whistleblowers. Sometimes from people trying to redirect attention. Sometimes from guilty individuals sacrificing others to protect themselves. Without knowing the source, the letter meant very little. But its existence confirmed one important fact. The fraud had become difficult to hide. Friday evening arrived with Ridgewell's annual executive charity gala. Sean had almost forgotten about it. Months earlier, spouses had been invited. Cora reminded him while adjusting diamond earrings in the bedroom mirror. We're supposed to leave at 6. Sean looked up from polishing his dress shoes. I remember. You don't have to come if you're tired. I'll be there. She seemed relieved. Perhaps appearing together mattered professionally. Perhaps Gregory expected it. Either way, Sean intended to attend. The gala occupied the grand ballroom of one of Columbus's finest hotels. Crystal chandeliers, live string quartet, round tables covered with white linen, corporate sponsors filled enormous display screens. Sean wore a dark navy suit he had owned for nearly a decade. Simple, well-tailored, nothing flashy. Cora wore an elegant burgundy evening gown. More than one executive complimented her appearance. Sean noticed Gregory watching them from across the room before eventually approaching. Sean. Gregory. The executive extended his hand. Sean shook it. Glad you could make it. So am I. Gregory turned toward Cora. You look wonderful tonight. Thank you. The exchange lasted only seconds. Yet Sean observed something interesting. Gregory maintained perfect professional distance. No lingering glance. No familiar touch. No hint that anything existed between them. To everyone watching, they appeared to be nothing more than executive and employee. Sean quietly admired the discipline. If Gregory had hidden financial fraud for years, concealing an affair probably came naturally. During dinner, Board Finance Committee Chair Margaret Holloway addressed the audience. She thanked donors, praised Ridgewell's growth, celebrated upcoming expansion projects. Every major construction initiative she described corresponded almost perfectly with invoices Sean had already questioned. Listening from his table, Sean realized something unsettling. Either Margaret Holloway genuinely believed every project existed, or she knowingly described projects built only on paper. He couldn't tell which possibility worried him more. After dessert guests spread throughout the ballroom, Sean stepped onto a balcony overlooking downtown Columbus. Cold November air drifted across the city lights. A familiar voice interrupted his thoughts. "Beautiful view." Sean turned. Detective Michael Foster stood beside him wearing a tuxedo. Sean looked surprised. "I didn't know you were invited." Michael smiled faintly. "I wasn't." Sean waited. "My wife sits on the hospital foundation board." He gestured toward the ballroom. "We're donors." The explanation sounded perfectly reasonable. Michael lowered his voice. "I need to ask one question." Sean nodded. "Have you seen Gregory Bennett leave the ballroom tonight?" "Not yet." The detective glanced toward the entrance. "If he does, I'd appreciate knowing where." Sean understood immediately. Gregory wasn't the only person observing tonight. Law enforcement was here too, not to make arrests, simply to watch. Michael quietly returned to the ballroom without another word. Sean remained alone on the balcony. A few minutes later, movement below caught his attention. Gregory Bennett exited through a side entrance. He looked around once, then climbed into a waiting black sedan. No company logo, no driver in uniform. The car pulled away from the hotel. Sean checked his watch. 9:47 p.m. When he returned inside, Gregory's place at the head table remained empty. No announcement explained his absence. Most guests never seemed to notice, but Sean did. So perhaps did Detective Michael Foster. And for the first time since overhearing Cora's confession, Sean felt certain that Gregory Bennett's secret life extended far beyond one affair and a handful of fraudulent invoices. Someone with that much to lose did not quietly leave a charity gala in the middle of the evening without a reason. Sean intended to discover what that reason was. Sean did not follow Gregory Bennett that night. The black sedan disappeared into downtown Columbus traffic before anyone could reasonably leave the hotel without attracting attention. Even if Sean had reached the parking garage immediately, chasing Gregory would have violated the rules he had established for himself from the beginning. He was gathering evidence, not improvising, not gambling. As he returned to the ballroom, Detective Michael Foster briefly caught his eye from across the room. Neither man acknowledged the other. No nod, no wave, nothing. To every guest present, they remained complete strangers. Sean appreciated the professionalism. The drive home was quiet. Emma had stayed with Sean's sister for the evening, so only Sean and Cora occupied the car. For several miles, neither of them spoke. Finally, Cora broke the silence. "You seemed distracted tonight." Sean kept his eyes on the road. There was a lot happening. "You hardly talked to anyone." "I talked when I needed to." She turned toward the passenger window. "Gregory asked about you." Sean glanced at her briefly. "What did he say?" "He said you seem like someone he'd like to promote." Sean smiled faintly. "He mentioned something similar last week." Cora appeared surprised. "He gave you a promotion speech?" "Not exactly. He gave me his business card." Her expression changed for just a fraction of a second. "You didn't tell me." "It didn't seem important." She looked away again. Sean noticed the silence that followed. For the first time, Cora appeared uncertain about something Gregory had done. That uncertainty interested Sean far more than any explanation she might have offered. The following Monday morning, Sean found a sealed envelope lying on his desk inside the maintenance office. No name, no return address. Inside was a single photocopy, one page from a financial spreadsheet. Most account numbers had been blacked out. Only 3 lines remained visible. Project 71482, Building 7. Approved payment $2 for 80,000. Final authorization G. Bennett. Across the bottom, someone had typed 4 words. Look at December payments. Sean examined the page carefully. No fingerprints were visible. No handwriting. The paper had been copied several times, reducing its quality. Someone clearly wanted to remain anonymous. Sean locked the page inside his desk until lunch. Then he called Rebecca Lawson. Rebecca studied the document under a bright desk lamp. Interesting. Sean waited. This isn't original. I know. But whoever sent it had access to internal finance records. She carefully placed the page inside a clear evidence sleeve. I don't want this. Sean looked surprised. You don't? No. Rebecca smiled slightly. I want you to leave it exactly where you found it after you've scanned it. Sean understood. If investigators eventually ask where it came from, you'll answer honestly. Rebecca folded her hands. You found an anonymous document on your desk. Nothing more. She looked directly at Sean. The moment you start creating your own theories, defense attorneys will argue you manufactured evidence. Sean nodded. The facts only. Always. That afternoon, Sean reviewed payment schedules connected to authorized maintenance work. The anonymous note specifically mentioned December. He searched only records his position legally allowed him to access. Within 30 minutes, he found another inconsistency. 3 emergency mechanical repair contracts had supposedly been completed during the week between Christmas and New Year's Day. Sean immediately remembered that week. The entire maintenance department had operated with a skeleton crew. Most offices were closed. Research laboratories functioned on holiday schedules. Large construction projects would have been impossible, yet the payment approvals totaled nearly $6 million. Sean opened archived maintenance logs, only emergency plumbing repairs, snow removal, routine inspections, nothing remotely close to multi-million-dollar mechanical installations. He quietly photographed the authorized records. Every timestamp remained untouched. Every file remained inside Ridgewell's system. Later that afternoon, Thomas Reed entered the maintenance workshop carrying 2 paper coffee cups. I figured you could use one. Sean accepted it. Thanks. Thomas closed the office door. I received another call. From who? The external auditors. Sean waited. They're expanding their review. Sean remained calm. 2 facilities. Thomas nodded slowly. They specifically requested holiday maintenance records. Sean almost smiled. Without realizing it, the auditors had asked for exactly the same period mentioned in the anonymous note. What did you give them? Everything they requested. Thomas hesitated. They also asked whether any employee had expressed concerns. Sean looked at him. What did you say? I told them no formal complaints had been filed. Sean appreciated the wording. Technically true. Anonymous letters weren't formal complaints. Neither were private conversations. Thomas lowered his voice. I think they're getting close. So do I. Wednesday evening brought another unexpected encounter. Sean stopped at a neighborhood hardware store to buy replacement hinges for Emma's bedroom closet. As he walked toward the checkout lanes, he recognized someone standing near the garden section. Gregory Bennett. The executive wore jeans and a dark jacket instead of his usual tailored suits. Beside him stood a man Sean had never seen before. The two appeared deep in conversation. Sean turned his shopping cart into another aisle before Gregory noticed him. From the end of the aisle, he could hear only fragments. Closing everything. Before year-end. Documents. Wire transfer. Nothing more. A store employee pushed a ladder between them, blocking the view. By the time Sean reached the checkout counter, Gregory and the unknown man had already left. Sean wrote down the approximate time in Rebecca's notebook after reaching his truck. Again, observation, not conclusion. On Thursday morning, Detective Michael Foster called unexpectedly. "I have a question." "I'm listening." "Were you at the Harrison Avenue hardware store yesterday?" Sean answered honestly. "Yes." "Did you happen to see Gregory Bennett?" Sean remained silent for 2 seconds. "I did." Michael's voice became more serious. "Did he see you?" "I don't believe so." "Good." Sean asked the obvious question. "Were you following him?" "I can't answer that." Sean accepted the response. "But I appreciate you telling me." Michael continued. "If Gregory approaches you again, I'll let you know." "No." The detective corrected him gently. "I want you to pay attention to whether he suddenly becomes friendlier." Sean thought back to the business card, the promotion conversation, the unexpected compliments. He already has. Silence filled the line. Finally, Michael spoke. "That concerns me." "Why?" "We've seen it before. People under investigation sometimes identify employees they think can either help them." He paused. Or become problems." Sean understood exactly what he meant. Friday afternoon, Sean received another invitation from Gregory. This one arrived through company email. Subject: Leadership Development Dinner. Only 6 employees had been invited. The dinner would take place the following Tuesday at an upscale steakhouse overlooking the Scioto River. Attendance was described as optional. Sean forwarded the email to Rebecca Lawson without comment. She called less than 10 minutes later. "You're going?" Sean had expected that answer. "You think I should?" "Absolutely." "Why?" Rebecca spoke carefully. "If Gregory is selecting people personally, I want to know who else is sitting at that table." Sean nodded. "I'll attend." "But remember something." Her voice became firmer. "You are not investigating him during dinner. You are not recording conversations. You are not asking questions. You are simply another employee who accepted an invitation." Sean smiled slightly. "I can do that." "I know you can." That evening, after Emma went to bed, Sean found Cora sitting alone in the family room. She looked unusually tired. Dark circles had begun forming beneath her eyes. For several minutes, they watched television without paying attention. Dark circles had begun forming beneath her eyes. For several minutes, they watched television without paying attention to it. Finally, she spoke. "Do you ever wonder if people become someone they never intended to be?" Sean looked at her. "Sometimes." "What do you think causes it?" He thought carefully before answering. "Small decisions." She frowned. "Not one big mistake." Sean slowly shook his head. "I think most lives change because people keep telling themselves one more compromise won't matter." Cora stared silently at the television screen. Her eyes glistened slightly. Before Sean could say anything else, her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She looked at the screen. For the first time since Sean had overheard her confession, she did not answer immediately. Instead, she let the call ring until it stopped. Sean noticed the caller's name reflected briefly in the dark television screen before disappearing. Gregory Bennett. Neither of them mentioned it. But for the first time, Sean wondered whether the pressure surrounding Gregory's carefully constructed world was beginning to reach Cora as well. And if it was, the cracks would not remain hidden forever. The invitation remained on Sean's calendar for 4 days. Leadership Development Dinner. Tuesday, 7:00 p.m., Riverside Prime Steakhouse. Only 6 employees had been invited. Sean never asked why he had been selected. He already suspected the answer. Gregory Bennett wanted him close. Whether that meant recruitment evaluation or something else remained unclear. Rebecca Lawson repeated her advice during a brief phone call that afternoon. Observe. I will. Speak naturally. I always do. Don't chase information. I won't. And if Gregory volunteers something, Sean finished the sentence for her. I simply listen. Rebecca smiled. Exactly. Tuesday arrived, cold and windy. Sean completed a full day replacing aging electrical panels in Building 4 before driving home to change clothes. Emma met him at the front door. Dad? Yes. Are you going somewhere fancy? Sean straightened his tie. Just a company dinner. She grinned. You look like a lawyer. Sean laughed quietly. I'll try not to take that as an insult. Emma hugged him before running upstairs. Sean noticed Cora watching from the kitchen. You never used to wear that tie? It still fits. She hesitated. Gregory mentioned the dinner? I'm aware. You'll probably enjoy it. Sean buttoned his jacket. We'll see. He left without another word. Riverside Prime overlooked the Scioto River through floor-to-ceiling windows. The private dining room had already been prepared. Round oak table, 7 leather chairs, no company banners, no presentation screens, only dinner. Gregory greeted each guest personally. Besides Sean, 5 others attended. Linda Perez from Finance, Daniel Morris from Procurement, Angela Kim from Marketing Analytics, Victor Hale from Corporate Security, and Eric Donovan, a young financial planning manager Sean recognized but barely knew. An interesting group. Facilities, finance, procurement, security, marketing, financial planning. Departments that rarely gathered together socially. Sean immediately noticed that. Gregory raised a glass. I appreciate all of you making time tonight. Everyone exchanged polite smiles. We're building Ridgewell's future. And I believe leadership starts before promotions. The speech sounded rehearsed. Sean listened without reacting. Dinner began normally. Career goals, company culture, family life. Gregory skillfully guided every conversation. He asked questions more than he answered them. What motivates you? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What frustrates you most? Each employee answered differently. Sean kept his responses simple. I enjoy solving problems. I like predictable systems. I prefer work that produces measurable results. Gregory smiled. I expected that. Sean noticed Gregory studying everyone's reactions almost as carefully as their answers. It felt less like dinner, more like interviews. Halfway through the meal, Gregory turned toward Linda Perez. Finance has been under pressure lately. Linda forced a smile. Audit season. Gregory nodded sympathetically. They're reviewing everything. Sean noticed Daniel Morris lower his eyes toward his plate. Gregory continued casually. But audits are healthy. They keep companies honest. The sentence lingered over the table. No one immediately replied. Sean watched Daniel. The procurement manager took a long drink of water before finally speaking. I suppose that's true. His voice sounded tighter than before. Sean quietly stored the observation away. After dessert, Gregory suggested coffee on the outdoor terrace. Only 4 employees accepted. Sean, Daniel, Victor, Gregory. The November air had emptied most of the restaurant's patio. City lights reflected across the river. Gregory leaned comfortably against the railing. I've always believed trust is the foundation of leadership. Victor nodded. So have I. Gregory looked toward Sean. In facilities, trust is everything. Sean answered calmly. If people don't trust maintenance buildings stop functioning. Gregory smiled. Exactly. Then, almost casually, he asked, Have you ever found yourself questioning decisions made above your position? Sean met his eyes. Sometimes. And what do you do? I verify the facts. Gregory's smile remained unchanged. Good answer. The conversation immediately shifted elsewhere, yet Sean knew that question had been asked for one reason only. Gregory wanted to know how Sean handled doubt. Sean had answered truthfully. Just not completely. As the evening ended, Gregory personally shook everyone's hand. When Sean's turn came, Gregory held his handshake slightly longer. We should have lunch sometime. Sean nodded. Whenever schedules allow. I'll have my assistant arrange it. Sean simply smiled. Driving home, he replayed the evening in his mind. Nothing openly suspicious had occurred. No confessions, no threats, no illegal discussions. Yet one thing stood out. Gregory had spent nearly 3 hours studying 6 employees far more carefully than he had spoken to them. The following morning, Sean found Detective Foster waiting inside a small coffee shop across from Ridgewell. The detective had texted only one sentence. If you have 10 minutes. Sean arrived before work. Michael slid a cup of black coffee across the table. How was dinner? Sean wasn't surprised, the detective already knew. Interesting. He summarized the evening. The guest list, Gregory's questions, the conversation about audits, the comment regarding trust. Michael listened carefully. When Sean finished, the detective asked only one question. Who looked most uncomfortable? Sean answered immediately. Daniel Morris. Michael nodded once. I thought you might say that. Sean studied him. You know Daniel. I know his name. Nothing more. The detective stood. I appreciate your time. Sean stopped him. Am I helping? Michael answered honestly. Yes. More than you realize. 3 days later, Ridgewell's atmosphere changed dramatically. An internal company-wide email announced that external auditors would remain on site for an expanded operational review. Most employees barely noticed. Managers certainly did. Conference room reservations disappeared. Finance executives hurried between meetings. Security officers appeared more frequently in administrative corridors. Even Gregory seemed busier. Sean observed everything. He changed nothing. Late Friday afternoon, Sean received another call from Thomas Reed. Can you come upstairs? Thomas's office door closed quietly behind them. Without speaking, Thomas handed Sean a printed spreadsheet. Employee access records. Sean recognized the format immediately. Electronic building entries. What am I looking at? Thomas pointed toward several highlighted lines. Daniel Morris, multiple after-hours entries, records archive, vendor contracts, financial storage, dates spanning nearly 6 months. Sean looked up. Were these authorized? Thomas answered carefully. They were approved. By who? Thomas turned another page. Every authorization carried the same electronic signature. Gregory Bennett. Sean slowly exhaled. Daniel hadn't merely looked uncomfortable during dinner. He had repeatedly entered restricted financial archives under Gregory's authority. Thomas spoke quietly. I think Daniel knows something. Sean nodded. So do I. But we don't know whether he's involved or trapped. Thomas finished the thought. Exactly. That evening, Sean arrived home to unexpected silence. No television, no music. Emma was spending the weekend with friends. Cora sat alone at the dining room table. An untouched plate of food rested in front of her. You haven't eaten. She looked up slowly. I'm not hungry. Sean removed his jacket. You look tired. I am. Several seconds passed. Finally, Cora whispered, Have you ever wished you could go back and undo one conversation? Sean looked at her carefully. What kind of conversation? One that changed everything. Sean considered the question. I think everyone has one. She lowered her eyes. I made mistakes. Sean remained silent. I keep telling myself I had reasons. Again. Silence. She almost seemed ready to continue. Instead, her phone vibrated. She looked at the screen. This time she rejected the call immediately. Then she switched the phone completely off. Sean noticed. He said nothing. A few minutes later, Cora quietly asked, "Do you still trust me?" Sean answered after a long pause. "I trust people to show me who they are." She looked at him with tears beginning to form. "And if they disappoint you," Sean spoke softly, "then I believe what they've shown me. No accusation, no anger, only calm." For Cora, somehow, that calm hurt far more than shouting ever could. Later that night, after she had gone upstairs, Sean opened Rebecca's notebook and recorded one final observation. Cora rejected Gregory Bennett's phone call voluntarily. First confirmed occurrence. He closed the notebook. The investigation outside Ridgewell continued moving forward. But inside his own home, another investigation had quietly begun. One measured not by invoices or financial records, but by whether Cora herself had finally started recognizing the man she had trusted was leading everyone around him toward the same inevitable collapse. The following Monday began with an unexpected announcement. All department supervisors were instructed to attend a mandatory operations meeting at 9 o'clock. Sean arrived 5 minutes early. The conference room felt noticeably different from previous meetings. Normally, department heads talked casually while waiting for executives to arrive. This morning, conversations were brief. Several managers checked their phones repeatedly. Others stared silently at printed agendas. Gregory Bennett entered exactly at 9. His appearance remained flawless. Perfect suit, confident smile, measured stride. If anything troubled him, it remained invisible. "Good morning, everyone." The meeting began with routine business. Budget projections, construction schedules, labor forecasts. Nothing unusual. Then Gregory paused. "I also want everyone to know we've welcomed an independent auditing team." He smiled reassuringly. "They're simply reviewing procedures. There is absolutely no reason for concern." Sean looked around the room. Most supervisors nodded. Daniel Morris did not. The procurement manager stared at his notebook without writing a single word. Sean quietly noticed another detail. Gregory mentioned procedures, not finances, not vendor contracts, not capital expenditures. The wording sounded carefully chosen. After the meeting, Sean returned to Building 7 to inspect rooftop ventilation systems. As he climbed the final ladder, his work phone vibrated. Thomas Reed. "I need you." "Where?" "My office." "There are auditors here." Sean immediately climbed back down. When he reached compliance 20 minutes later, 2 unfamiliar professionals sat across from Thomas's desk. Both wore dark business suits. Neither introduced themselves with company titles. Only names: Susan Keller, Mark Ellison. Susan spoke first. "Mr. Cox, thank you for coming." Sean nodded politely. Thomas remained silent. Susan continued. "We're reviewing facilities documentation." "I understand. We have a few technical questions." The interview lasted nearly 40 minutes. Every question focused on process. How were maintenance projects initiated? Who confirmed completion? Who verified equipment installation? Sean answered carefully. "When maintenance work is requested, my department verifies physical completion. If equipment isn't installed, we don't certify completion." Susan asked another question. "Have you ever been asked to certify work you couldn't verify?" Sean considered the wording. "Not directly. Indirectly. Occasionally, invoices referenced projects my department wasn't involved in." Susan looked at Mark. "When that happened, I documented what my department actually observed. Nothing more, nothing less." The auditors thanked him. No accusations, no dramatic revelations, just facts, exactly as Rebecca had instructed. Outside the compliance office, Thomas caught up with Sean. "They're asking better questions." Sean nodded. "They're asking the right questions." Thomas looked around the hallway before speaking. "I recognized them." "You did?" "They're not ordinary auditors." Sean waited. "They've handled corporate fraud investigations before." Sean absorbed the information quietly. Without saying another word, both men returned to work. That evening, Detective Michael Foster called again. "You met Susan Keller today?" Sean wasn't surprised anymore. "I did." "How did it go?" "I answered their questions." Michael sounded satisfied. "Good." Sean hesitated before asking, "Are they working with you?" The detective paused. "I can't discuss ongoing coordination." Sean smiled faintly. "I thought you might say that." Michael changed the subject. "Has Gregory contacted you again?" "Sue." "No." "What about Daniel Morris?" "Not since the dinner." Michael's tone became thoughtful. "Keep paying attention." "To Daniel?" "Yes. People under pressure eventually make choices." Sean understood. Some cooperated. Others panicked. Both could change an investigation overnight. Wednesday afternoon delivered exactly that. Sean had just finished replacing an emergency exit sign when Daniel Morris appeared outside the maintenance workshop. He looked exhausted. His tie hung loose. His eyes were bloodshot. Sean invited him inside. "You look like you haven't slept." Daniel attempted a weak smile. "Haven't." Neither man spoke for several seconds. Finally, Daniel asked, "You were in the Army, right?" "Yes." "What did they teach you about loyalty?" Sean answered honestly. "They taught me loyalty isn't blind." Daniel stared at the concrete floor. "What if doing the right thing destroys your career?" Sean thought carefully. "If the career depends on doing the wrong thing..." He let the sentence finish itself. Daniel slowly nodded. "I've made mistakes." Sean remained silent. "I never stole anything." Again, silence. "I signed papers." Sean still said nothing. Daniel rubbed both hands across his face. "I kept telling myself everyone above me had already approved them." Sean finally spoke. "What papers?" Daniel looked toward the closed door, then shook his head. "I shouldn't have come." He stood abruptly. "Forget this conversation." Without waiting for an answer, he walked away. Sean watched him leave. He did not follow. He did not call out. Instead, he immediately opened Rebecca's notebook. Time, date, location. Exact statements Daniel had made. No interpretation, only words. That evening, Rebecca read Sean's notes carefully. "He feels trapped." Sean nodded. "So it seems." Rebecca closed the notebook. "Don't contact him." "I wasn't planning to." "If he decides to cooperate, he has to choose it himself." Sean understood. Witnesses who volunteered information carried far more credibility than witnesses who felt pressured. Thursday morning began with another surprise. Company security escorted several outside document specialists into the executive records department. Employees watched quietly from their offices. No announcements were made, no explanations offered. By lunchtime, rumors spread throughout Ridgewell. Someone whispered about missing contracts. Someone else mentioned financial irregularities. Another employee claimed the board of directors had scheduled an emergency meeting. Sean ignored every rumor. Rumors solved nothing. Documents did. Late that afternoon, Gregory Bennett unexpectedly visited the maintenance department. Every technician immediately noticed. Executives almost never entered maintenance workshops. Gregory smiled warmly. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Sean stepped forward. "What can I do for you?" "I wanted to thank your team." He looked around the workshop. "You've kept this campus running through a challenging year." Several technicians smiled proudly. Gregory continued. I believe hard work deserves recognition. He handed Sean a sealed envelope. Holiday bonus recommendations. Sean accepted it politely. Thank you. Gregory lowered his voice just enough for only Sean to hear. We should still schedule that lunch. Sean met his eyes. I'll check my calendar. Gregory smiled once more before leaving. The entire visit lasted less than 3 minutes. Carl Jensen immediately walked over. Since when does an executive personally deliver bonus letters? Sean shrugged. First time for everything. But inside another question formed. Why now? Sean waited until reaching home before opening the envelope. Inside was a promotion recommendation. Facilities operations manager. Effective January 1st. Salary increase. Expanded authority. Executive development program. No official approval yet. Only Gregory Bennett's recommendation. Sean read the document twice. Then he drove directly to Rebecca Lawson's office. She studied the paperwork carefully. This isn't a promotion. Sean looked at her. No. It's an invitation? To what? Rebecca folded the recommendation. Closer proximity. Closer loyalty. She looked directly at Sean. If Gregory falls, he wants trusted people nearby. Sean considered the possibility. You think he's testing me? I think he's trying to decide whether you're useful. Sean remained thoughtful. What should I do? Rebecca answered without hesitation. Accept nothing. But reject nothing. Leave everything exactly where it is. Friday evening, Sean found Emma waiting in the garage as he returned from work. Dad? She held up a certificate from school. I won first place in science. Sean smiled wider than he had in weeks. I knew you would. It's because the volcano actually erupted. Sean laughed. I had a good teacher. No. Emma shook her head. I had one. She hugged him tightly. For a few precious moments, fraud investigations, corporate corruption, anonymous letters, and executive deception disappeared completely. Sean was simply a father. Nothing else. As they walked into the house together, he noticed Cora standing quietly in the hallway watching them. Her expression softened. Perhaps for the first time in months, she seemed to recognize everything that still existed inside her home. Not wealth, not promotions, not executive titles. Just a husband celebrating his daughter's small victory. Later that night, after Emma had fallen asleep, Sean stepped outside onto the back porch. His phone buzzed. One new text message, unknown number. Only 7 words appeared on the screen. Daniel is meeting Gregory tomorrow. Warehouse district. No signature, no explanation. Sean stared at the message for several long seconds. Then he locked the phone, looked up at the dark Ohio sky, and realized that after months of patiently assembling scattered pieces, the investigation was finally moving beyond documents. Someone was beginning to talk, and once frightened people started talking, carefully constructed lies rarely survived for very long. Sean did not go to the warehouse district the next morning. The anonymous text message remained exactly that. Anonymous, unverified. Rebecca Lawson had warned him repeatedly that the quickest way to destroy months of disciplined work was to abandon facts in favor of curiosity. Instead, Sean forwarded the message to Detective Michael Foster. No commentary, no speculation, only the screenshot. Less than 2 minutes later, Foster replied. Received. Thank you. Nothing else. Sean slipped the phone back into his pocket and drove to Ridgewell exactly as he did every weekday. Whatever happened in the warehouse district would be handled by people whose job it was to investigate. His responsibility remained unchanged. Observe, document. Tell the truth? By mid-morning, Ridgewell felt unusually tense. Executive assistants hurried between offices carrying sealed folders. Conference room doors remained closed. Several board members rarely seen on campus outside quarterly meetings walked through the executive wing. Carl Jensen noticed it too. Feels like inspection day. Sean tightened the bolts on an air handling unit. Something's happening. You know what? No. Carl shrugged. Everybody's nervous except Gregory. Sean looked across the mechanical room window toward the executive parking lot. Sometimes people appear calm because they know more than everyone else. Carl laughed. You always answer like that. Sean smiled slightly. Old army habit. Just after lunch, Thomas Reed called. They're here. Who? The board audit committee. Sean met Thomas outside the compliance office. 3 unfamiliar board representatives entered a secured conference room carrying briefcases. Margaret Holloway walked beside them. Her expression remained composed, but Sean noticed she no longer carried the confidence she had displayed during the charity gala. Thomas spoke quietly. They've been inside almost 2 hours. No one has left. No. Sean simply nodded. Neither man attempted to learn more. There would be time for answers later. Around 3 o'clock, Sean received another maintenance request. Executive conference suite, projector malfunction. He gathered his equipment and entered the executive floor. The conference suite itself stood empty. Apparently, the meeting had moved elsewhere. As Sean replaced a damaged HDMI control module, he heard voices from the adjoining private board lounge. The heavy door remained mostly closed. The conversation was muffled. Only fragments reached him. Full cooperation. Financial exposure. Outside counsel. Then Gregory's unmistakable voice. We don't have complete information yet. Another voice answered sharply. We've had enough time. Silence followed. Sean continued working. He neither approached the door nor attempted to hear more. His repair finished 8 minutes later. He completed the work order, photographed the repaired equipment, and left. Again, facts, not assumptions. Near the end of the workday, Daniel Morris appeared once more. This time he looked even worse. His face had lost color. His hands trembled slightly. Sean. Sean closed the maintenance office door. Daniel spoke before Sean could ask anything. I met Gregory. Sean waited. He wants loyalty. Again, silence. He said we're all going to get through this if nobody panics. Sean continued listening. He promised everything would be fine. Daniel laughed bitterly. I don't believe him anymore. Sean still refused to interrupt. Daniel looked directly at him. Can I ask you something? Of course. If someone tells the truth, after making bad decisions, does that matter? Sean answered slowly. It matters. Daniel searched his face. Even if it's late. Better late than never. Daniel closed his eyes briefly. I signed vendor approvals. Sean remained still. I never created fake companies. I never moved money, but I approved invoices. He swallowed hard. Gregory said legal reviewed everything. Sean asked his first question. Did you know the work wasn't completed? Daniel hesitated. At first, no. And later, I stopped asking. The room became silent again. Daniel reached into his coat pocket. He placed a flash drive on Sean's workbench. Sean did not touch it. What is it? My email archive. Sean looked at the drive, but left it where it lay. You shouldn't give that to me. Daniel seemed confused. Why not? Because I'm not an investigator. Daniel stared at him. What do I do? Sean answered calmly. Talk to your attorney. And if you decide to cooperate, he slid Detective Foster's business card across the workbench. Call him. Daniel looked at the card for several seconds. Then he picked it up. What about the drive? Take it with you. Daniel hesitated. Finally, he returned the flash drive to his pocket. Thank you. As he walked away, Sean immediately documented every word of the conversation. Nothing more. nothing less. At 6:30 that evening, Sean arrived home. Cora stood in the kitchen preparing dinner. She looked startled to see him carrying grocery bags. "I thought you'd work late." "I finished on time." Emma rushed downstairs holding another science project. "Dad, can you help me?" Of course. For nearly an hour, Sean and Emma worked at the dining room table, assembling a model bridge. They measured wooden pieces, applied glue carefully, tested balance. Sean explained why triangular supports created stronger structures. Emma listened intently. Across the kitchen, Cora quietly watched them. Several times she seemed about to speak. Each time she stopped herself. After Emma went upstairs, Cora carried 2 cups of coffee onto the back porch. She handed one to Sean. "I've been thinking." Sean waited. "I don't recognize my own life anymore." He remained silent. "I used to know exactly what mattered." She looked into the darkness beyond the yard. "Now I don't." Sean answered gently. "Sometimes people lose direction slowly." She nodded. "I think I did." A long silence followed. Finally, she whispered, "If someone wanted to tell the truth, where would they even begin?" Sean looked at her. "With the first lie." She lowered her eyes. Before either of them could continue, headlights swept across the driveway. A sedan stopped at the curb. No one got out. Instead, the driver remained inside for several moments before pulling away. Sean recognized neither the vehicle nor the license plate. He made no comment. Neither did Cora. The following morning brought news that spread through Ridgewell within minutes. Daniel Morris had not reported to work. His office remained locked. His calendar had been cleared. Human Resources described his absence only as personal leave. Carl Jensen leaned against Sean's doorway. "That's strange." Sean continued reviewing maintenance schedules. "Maybe." Carl lowered his voice. "You think it has something to do with the auditors?" Sean answered honestly. "I don't know." Because he didn't. Daniel could have resigned, taken leave, become ill, or chosen another path entirely. Facts would arrive soon enough. At 10:18 a.m., Sean's phone vibrated. One text message. "Detective Michael Foster. Can you meet today? Same office." 3 o'clock. Sean replied with one word. "Yes." The detective greeted him with a noticeably different expression than usual. Not excitement, relief. He closed the office door. "I wanted to tell you personally." Sean waited. "Daniel Morris contacted us this morning." Sean said nothing. "He arrived with legal counsel." Michael paused. "He also brought several boxes of original procurement records." Sean slowly nodded. "He decided to cooperate." "Yes." The detective looked directly at Sean. "And those records confirm that fraudulent vendors were approved over multiple years." Sean remained composed. Michael continued. "This investigation just changed." He opened a folder but did not reveal its contents. "We're no longer trying to determine whether fraud occurred. We're determining how high it reached." Sean understood exactly what that meant. The question was no longer whether Gregory Bennett had built a criminal enterprise inside Ridgewell. The question had become how many people had climbed into it with him before realizing the ladder was about to collapse beneath them. Daniel Morris's decision to cooperate did not become public immediately. Monday morning arrived as though nothing had changed. Employees carried coffee through the lobby. Maintenance requests filled Sean's work queue. Laboratory researchers hurried toward elevators with stacks of reports. From the outside, Ridgewell Medical Technologies still looked like one of the most respected companies in Columbus. Inside, however, invisible pressure continued building. Sean sensed it in small ways. Finance managers stopped talking when other employees entered the room. Executive assistants shredded far more paper than usual. Even Gregory Bennett's office door remained closed for most of the morning. At 10:30, Thomas Reed appeared outside the maintenance workshop. "We need to walk." Sean understood immediately. Neither man spoke until they reached a quiet courtyard behind Building 3. Thomas finally broke the silence. The board suspended several payment approvals. Sean looked at him. "Temporary." "So they say." "What about Gregory? Still in his position?" Sean nodded. That did not surprise him. Large corporations rarely removed senior executives without preparation. The board would want evidence that could survive both legal scrutiny and public attention. Thomas lowered his voice. "I've also been instructed to preserve every compliance record." "By whom?" "The board's outside counsel." That answer mattered. Outside counsel meant the situation had moved beyond an internal review. Lawyers were preparing for consequences. Shortly before lunch, Sean received an unexpected call from Rebecca Lawson. "I just heard something." "What?" "Federal subpoenas." Sean remained silent. "They've been issued." "For Ridgewell." "I can't discuss details." She paused. "But I strongly recommend you continue preserving your notes exactly as you have." "I will." Rebecca hesitated. "Sean." "Yes." "No matter what happens next." "Don't celebrate." Sean understood her meaning immediately. Investigations often became emotional. People sought revenge, vindication, public humiliation. Rebecca wanted none of that. "The goal isn't to win," she said quietly. "It's to tell the truth." "I understand." That afternoon, Sean inspected emergency generators beneath Building 6. The work required nearly 2 hours in the mechanical basement. When he finally returned upstairs, Carl Jensen met him at the elevator. "Executive floor." "What happened?" "They're asking for you." Sean carried his tool bag upstairs. Gregory Bennett stood alone inside the executive conference room overlooking downtown Columbus. He smiled as Sean entered. "Thanks for coming." "You needed maintenance." Gregory laughed softly. "No. I wanted to talk." Sean placed his tool bag beside the door. "What can I help you with?" Gregory gestured toward 2 chairs. "Sit down." Sean remained standing. "I'm comfortable here." Gregory's smile barely changed. "I've always admired people who stay calm." Sean said nothing. Gregory folded his hands across the conference table. "You've been with Ridgewell a long time." 12 years. "You've seen executives come and go." "Yes." "You understand loyalty." Sean answered carefully. "I understand responsibility." Gregory nodded slowly. "Same difference." Sean knew they were not the same. He chose not to argue. Gregory continued. "There are going to be difficult weeks ahead." Sean waited. "Auditors? Lawyers? Investigators? They create misunderstandings." Again, silence. "I hope employees won't jump to conclusions." Sean finally spoke. "I try not to." Gregory studied him for several long seconds. Then he smiled once more. "I knew I could count on your professionalism." The meeting ended there. Less than 10 minutes, no accusations, no requests, no threats, only carefully chosen words. As Sean left the room, he realized Gregory had just attempted something subtle. He had tried to define loyalty before the investigation reached its conclusion. Sean refused to accept that definition. Later that evening, Detective Foster called. "Did Gregory speak with you today?" Sean wasn't surprised. The detective already knew. "He did." "What did he say?" Sean repeated the conversation almost word for word. Michael listened without interrupting. When Sean finished, the detective sighed. "He's beginning to prepare witnesses." "You think so?" "I've seen similar conversations before." Sean leaned against his truck outside his house. "He never asked me to lie." "No," Michael agreed. Experienced executives rarely do. They simply encourage people to remember events a certain way. Sean understood. There was a difference. Legally, morally, practically. Wednesday morning began with flashing news alerts across employees' phones. A regional business publication reported that Ridgewell Medical Technologies had confirmed cooperation with an ongoing financial review. The article contained few details. No names, no allegations, no mention of Gregory Bennett. Still, the effect inside the company proved immediate. Hallway conversations stopped whenever supervisors approached. Human Resources canceled several recruiting interviews. Outside reporters appeared near the main entrance. Security quietly redirected them. Sean continued replacing worn ceiling lights in Building 2. His work remained exactly the same. That afternoon, Cora unexpectedly appeared in the maintenance department. She almost never visited Sean during work hours. Several technicians exchanged curious glances before returning to their assignments. "You have a minute?" Sean nodded. They stepped into an empty storage room. Cora looked exhausted. "I resigned." Sean blinked once. "You resigned?" "This morning." She looked down at the floor. "I couldn't stay." Sean asked only one question. "Why?" Tears filled her eyes. "Because every day I walked into that building, I remembered another lie." Sean remained silent. She continued speaking before she could lose her courage. "I told myself it wasn't hurting anyone. I kept saying I'd end everything. I never did." Her breathing became uneven. "I thought Gregory cared about me." She laughed bitterly through tears. "I was just convenient." Sean still didn't interrupt. For months he had waited. Not for excuses, for honesty. Finally, Cora whispered the words she had avoided for so long. "I'm sorry." No explanations followed, no attempt to shift blame, only those two words. Sean looked at her quietly. "I believe you're sorry." She covered her face. "I don't expect forgiveness. I know. I don't even know if I deserve it." Sean answered honestly. "That isn't something I can decide today." She nodded slowly. "I understand." Before leaving, she added one final sentence. "I'll tell the truth." Then she walked away. Sean remained alone inside the storage room for nearly a minute. Not because he doubted her, because he realized the investigation had now entered his own family completely. That evening, Rebecca Lawson listened carefully as Sean described the conversation. She spoke only after he finished. "Did she admit the affair?" "Yes." "Did she discuss the financial investigation?" "No." Rebecca nodded. "Then keep those subjects separate." Sean understood. The affair explained personal betrayal. The fraud required independent evidence. Blending them together would weaken both. Friday morning, Ridgewell employees arrived to discover uniformed officers standing near the executive entrance. Not many, only enough to be noticed. They spoke quietly with company security. Several unmarked government vehicles occupied visitor parking. Sean watched from a distance while replacing an exterior access reader. No one appeared panicked, yet everyone noticed. At exactly 9:15, 3 investigators carrying document cases entered the administration building. At 9:22, another vehicle arrived. Detective Michael Foster stepped out. He looked toward Sean briefly. No acknowledgement, no signal. Just professional distance. Sean returned to his work. 25 minutes later, executive elevators were temporarily secured. Employees waited in unusually long lines. Rumors spread almost instantly. Search warrants, board investigation, federal agents, nobody knew. Sean refused to guess. Around noon, Thomas Reed appeared beside him outside Building 1. His face looked pale. "It started." Sean closed his toolbox. "What has—" Thomas exhaled slowly. The board has placed Gregory Bennett on administrative leave. Sean looked toward the executive tower. The blinds in Gregory's corner office had been lowered for the first time since Sean could remember. Thomas continued quietly. They escorted him out through the private entrance. Sean asked the only question that mattered. Was he arrested? Thomas shook his head. No. Not today. Sean nodded once. Administrative leave was not justice. It was only the first visible crack in a structure that had appeared solid for years. The investigation was no longer hidden inside confidential meetings or anonymous documents. For the first time, everyone inside Ridgewell could see that something extraordinary was happening, and Sean knew the hardest part was still ahead. The truth had finally reached the surface. Now it would have to withstand the light. Gregory Bennett's office remained dark the following Monday. For years, employees had grown accustomed to seeing the lights in the executive corner suite long before sunrise. Now the blinds remained closed. The nameplate still hung outside the door. His personal photographs still decorated the reception area, but the office itself had become a silent reminder that something fundamental had changed. No official announcement explained his absence beyond the phrase, administrative leave. Employees filled the missing details with speculation. Sean ignored every rumor. He focused on replacing a malfunctioning fire alarm panel in Building 5. Work still mattered. People still depended on safe buildings. That responsibility had never changed. Around mid-morning, Thomas Reed stopped beside Sean's ladder. The board wants to see you. Sean climbed down carefully. Now? Thomas nodded. They requested you specifically. Sean placed his tools inside the maintenance cart and followed Thomas upstairs. The board conference room felt very different from Gregory's executive meetings. No polished speeches, no expensive artwork intended to impress visitors. Only a long table covered with organized binders. Margaret Holloway sat at one end. 3 outside attorneys occupied the opposite side. Susan Keller, the lead investigator Sean had met weeks earlier, also attended. Margaret spoke first. Mr. Cox, thank you for coming. Sean nodded politely. We understand you've cooperated fully throughout this review. I've answered every question honestly. Susan smiled faintly. We know. One attorney slid a document toward Sean. We'd like you to review this summary. Sean carefully read the page. It described maintenance verification procedures. Every statement accurately reflected how his department operated. One sentence caught his attention. Facilities maintenance never certified construction completion without physical inspection. Susan noticed him reading it again. Is that accurate? Yes. Completely? Yes. She nodded. Thank you. No one asked him to speculate. No one requested opinions about Gregory. The interview remained centered entirely on facts. When it concluded, Margaret stood. I also owe you something. Sean looked up. An apology. The room became quiet. We approved budgets without asking enough questions. Her voice carried genuine regret. We should have recognized warning signs earlier. Sean answered respectfully. I appreciate you saying that. Margaret lowered her eyes briefly. So do I. As Sean left the conference room, Susan Keller walked beside him into the hallway. One more thing. Sean waited. Your notebooks. He immediately understood. They've helped. I documented only what I observed. Exactly. She smiled. That's why they're valuable. She extended her hand. Thank you for staying disciplined. Sean shook it once before returning downstairs. The following afternoon, Detective Michael Foster requested another meeting. This time, his office looked different. Large evidence boxes lined one wall. Several maps covered another. Folders occupied nearly every available surface. The investigation had clearly expanded. Michael poured 2 cups of coffee. We've executed additional search warrants. Sean listened. We recovered original vendor contracts. Good. We also recovered deleted financial records. Sean nodded. Michael continued. Daniel Morris's documents matched them almost perfectly. Sean remained silent. Then Michael looked directly at him. Gregory Bennett has retained criminal defense counsel. Sean had expected that. What happens now? We continue building the case. Michael paused. And we interview additional witnesses. Sean asked the obvious question. Has Gregory spoken? Not to us. Michael smiled slightly. His attorneys have. That answer revealed enough. Life at home slowly changed as well. Without Ridgewell occupying every conversation, Cora seemed quieter, more reflective. She spent several days searching for work, but refused to apply anywhere immediately. I need to earn another opportunity, she told Sean one evening. Not expect one. Sean appreciated the honesty. Emma noticed changes too. During dinner, she looked from one parent to the other. You two talk more now. Neither adult answered immediately. Finally, Sean smiled. I suppose we do. Emma seemed satisfied. She returned to discussing an upcoming school science competition. For a few minutes, the family sounded almost normal. Not healed, but calmer. Late Wednesday afternoon, Rebecca Lawson invited Sean to her office. I received confirmation. About what? The civil side of this case. Sean sat across from her. Rebecca organized several documents into neat stacks. Ridgewell intends to cooperate fully. That's good. They've also informed us that Gregory's promotion recommendation for you has been officially withdrawn. Sean smiled slightly. I expected that. Rebecca smiled back. You also shouldn't worry. I'm not. The board has already asked Human Resources to evaluate leadership within facilities independently. Sean looked at her. Without Gregory. Exactly. She leaned forward. Your future won't be determined by someone under investigation. Sean appreciated hearing those words. Not because he wanted a promotion, because he wanted any decision to be based on merit rather than manipulation. Thursday morning brought another visible change. Gregory Bennett's name disappeared from the executive directory near the main entrance. Employees slowed as they walked past it. Some whispered, others simply stared. The polished brass plaque had been removed overnight. Nothing replaced it. Only an empty space remained. Carl Jensen shook his head. Never thought I'd see that. Sean looked at the blank section of the directory. Neither did I. Carl spoke quietly. You think he'll come back? Sean answered honestly. I don't know. Because he truly didn't. Administrative leave could become resignation, termination, or something entirely different. Only time would answer. Friday afternoon, Thomas Reed entered the maintenance workshop carrying a thick folder. I wanted you to see something. He placed a memorandum on Sean's desk. Official board communication. The first paragraph announced several governance reforms, independent approval procedures, expanded compliance authority, mandatory project verification. The second paragraph caught Sean's attention. Effective. Immediately, all capital construction projects required written certification from facilities before payment authorization. Thomas smiled. Sound familiar? Sean nodded. It should have existed years ago. It does now. Thomas closed the folder. Sometimes companies learn the hard way. That evening, Sean drove Emma to her science competition. Parents filled the school auditorium. Children carried carefully assembled projects across folding tables. Emma proudly presented her bridge design. When judges tested it with increasing amounts of weight, it held longer than nearly every other model. Sean watched from the audience. Cora sat beside him. Without thinking, she reached for his hand as the final results were announced. Emma won first place. Both parents stood and applauded. For a brief moment, neither investigation nor betrayal existed. Only their daughter. After the ceremony, Emma raced toward them, holding another ribbon. "I told you the support beams would work," Sean laughed. "You certainly did." She hugged both parents at once. "I want ice cream." Cora smiled through tears. "I think you've earned it." Saturday afternoon, Sean received one final request from Detective Foster. They met in the same office where so many conversations had taken place over the previous months. Michael closed a file before speaking. "I wanted to thank you." Sean looked surprised. "I didn't do anything extraordinary." "I disagree." Michael folded his hands. "Most people either panic or try becoming investigators themselves. You did neither." Sean thought about Rebecca's advice from the beginning. Facts, patience, discipline. Michael continued. "Because you stayed within your responsibilities." Every piece of evidence remained credible. Sean nodded quietly. "What happens next?" "The prosecutors take over." Michael stood. "My part becomes smaller." He extended his hand. "You helped protect the integrity of this case." Sean shook it firmly. "Thank you." As he walked toward the parking lot, his phone vibrated. An email from Human Resources, subject facilities leadership appointment. Sean opened it. "Following an independent review by the board and executive leadership, you are hereby appointed interim director of facilities operations, pending final organizational restructuring. The appointment would become effective the following Monday." No recommendation from Gregory appeared anywhere in the document. No political favor, no personal influence. Only one sentence near the end stood out. "This appointment recognizes your consistent professionalism, documented integrity, and exemplary performance throughout a challenging period for the organization." Sean read it twice before placing the phone back into his pocket. For months he had watched one executive build success through deception. Now, quietly and without celebration, he had received something Gregory could never manufacture. Trust. And Sean understood that trust, once honestly earned, would outlast every title that fraud had ever purchased. Sean's first morning as interim director of facilities operations began before sunrise. The campus looked the same. Parking lots slowly filled. Delivery trucks rolled through the security gate. Steam drifted from rooftop ventilation units into the cold Ohio air. Yet Sean knew the day marked the beginning of a different chapter. Not because of the title printed on his identification badge, because the responsibility now extended beyond repairing equipment. He was responsible for rebuilding trust. At 7 o'clock, he gathered every maintenance supervisor inside the operations conference room. No catered breakfast waited on the table. No polished executive presentation filled the screen. Only a whiteboard, a notebook, and a printed agenda. Sean stood at the front of the room. "I appreciate everyone coming." The supervisors settled into their chairs. Carl Jensen smiled. "This feels different already." Sean nodded. "It is." He wrote 3 words on the whiteboard: safety, accuracy, accountability. "These are our priorities." He looked around the room. "If a project isn't complete, we won't certify it. If documentation doesn't match reality, we correct it. If anyone pressures you to ignore either rule, you come directly to me." Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then one supervisor raised his hand. "What if the request comes from an executive?" Sean answered without hesitation. "The answer stays the same." The room remained quiet. Not because anyone disagreed, because they realized he meant every word. Later that morning, Margaret Holloway visited the facilities department. For years, board members had rarely entered maintenance offices. Now she walked through every section. She greeted technicians by name whenever possible. Finally, she reached Sean's office. "I wanted to congratulate you." "Thank you." "You've earned this." Sean appreciated the sentiment. I intend to justify the board's confidence. Margaret smiled. I believe you will. Before leaving, she paused. We've spent too many years measuring success only by quarterly reports. Sean listened. We forgot that organizations are built by people who quietly do the right thing every day. She looked around the maintenance workshop. I don't intend to forget that again. That afternoon, Rebecca Lawson called. I have news. Sean closed his office door. I'm listening. The prosecutors filed formal charges. Sean remained silent. Wire fraud. Conspiracy. Corporate records violations. She continued carefully. Gregory Bennett has entered a plea of not guilty. Sean expected nothing less. When is the first hearing? Several weeks. Rebecca paused. You probably won't testify immediately. I understand. But preserve every notebook. They're already secured. Rebecca smiled. I knew they would be. The weeks that followed unfolded more quietly than Sean had imagined. Television crews occasionally appeared outside Ridgewell. Business reporters requested interviews. The company declined everyone. Inside the campus, operations slowly returned to normal. Projects resumed. Budgets required additional signatures. Compliance reviews became routine. Employees gradually stopped whispering in hallways. Life moved forward. Not quickly, but steadily. Cora also began rebuilding her own life. She accepted an administrative position with a nonprofit community health organization across town. The salary was lower. The office was smaller. The prestige barely compared to Ridgewell. She accepted the offer anyway. Her first evening home, she handed Sean a copy of her employment letter. I wanted you to know. Sean read it carefully. It seems like honest work. She nodded. That's exactly why I accepted. No promises accompanied the conversation. No request for forgiveness. Only another quiet decision pointing in a better direction. One Saturday afternoon, Sean and Emma repaired the old wooden fence surrounding their backyard. Emma carefully measured each replacement board. Sean showed her how to keep every post perfectly level. She frowned in concentration. If it's crooked now, it'll stay crooked forever. Sean smiled. That's true for fences. Emma looked at him thoughtfully. And people? Sean considered the question. People can straighten themselves. It usually takes longer. Emma accepted that answer with the uncomplicated wisdom of an 11-year-old. Then we should help them. Sean looked toward the house where Cora was planting flowers along the porch. I think we should. Autumn arrived. Leaves covered the Ridgewell campus. The criminal case continued moving through court. Sean rarely heard details. Rebecca intentionally shared only information that affected him directly. One afternoon, she visited his office carrying a single folder. The defense reviewed your notes. Sean looked up. And they challenged almost everyone else's recollections. She smiled slightly. They didn't challenge yours. Why? Because every entry included dates, times, locations, observed facts, no opinions. She closed the folder. Your discipline protected your credibility. Sean remembered the first day she had instructed him to separate evidence from emotion. Only now did he fully understand how important that advice had been. Several months later, Detective Michael Foster invited Sean to lunch. Not in an office, not over case files, just lunch. A quiet diner overlooking the Scioto River. Michael stirred his coffee. The trial won't last much longer. Sean nodded. You've been busy. So have you. Michael smiled. I heard employee satisfaction numbers improved. Sean laughed softly. I didn't know detectives followed maintenance statistics. I follow outcomes. Michael leaned back. Buildings are being repaired. People trust the process again. That's not an accident. Sean appreciated the compliment. Michael became more serious. You know something. What? When we first met, I assumed you were another angry husband. Sean waited. I was wrong. You became the most reliable witness in the investigation. Sean answered quietly. I was just trying to do my job. Michael nodded. Exactly. Winter arrived with the first heavy snowfall. One evening, Sean drove home through quiet Columbus streets. Christmas lights reflected across fresh snow. Inside the house, Emma sat wrapping presents for classmates. Cora prepared dinner. The atmosphere still carried scars. Trust had not magically returned. Some conversations remained difficult. Some silences remained painful. Healing Sean had learned followed no calendar, yet something undeniable had changed. Nobody inside the house was pretending anymore. Truth, however uncomfortable, had replaced illusion. That alone made the home feel lighter. A few days before Christmas, Sean received another email from Human Resources. This one contained no temporary language. Following completion of the board's organizational review, your appointment as Director of Facilities Operations is hereby confirmed. Congratulations. Sean quietly closed the message. He did not print it. He did not frame it. Instead, he walked through the maintenance department thanking technicians who had worked beside him for years. Carl shook his hand. Told you. Sean smiled. We all earned this. No, Carl laughed. You earned it. Sean disagreed. No building stays standing because of one person. Everyone returned to work. That answer sounded exactly like Sean. On Christmas Eve, after Emma had gone to bed, Sean and Cora stood together on the back porch. Snow covered the yard. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Cora broke the silence. I used to think success meant being close to powerful people. Sean listened. I know better now. She looked toward him. I don't know what our future looks like. Sean answered honestly. Neither do I. But we're telling the truth. Yes. And that's a better place to begin than where we were. Tears filled her eyes again. This time they were different. Not driven by panic or guilt, only quiet understanding. Sean looked across the peaceful neighborhood. Months earlier, one sentence overheard outside a conference room had shattered his world. He could still hear it clearly. He would probably always remember it. But that sentence no longer defined the rest of his life. Choices did. Thousands of small choices. To remain calm, to preserve evidence, to protect the truth, to place integrity above revenge. Those choices had led him here, not to a perfect ending. Life rarely offered such things. Instead, they had led him to something far more durable. A daughter who still admired him, colleagues who trusted him, a career rebuilt on honesty rather than influence, and the quiet certainty that no matter how painful the journey had been, he had never once needed to become someone else in order to overcome the people who had. Sean's first morning as interim director of facilities operations began before sunrise. The campus looked the same. Parking lots slowly filled. Delivery trucks rolled through the security gate. Steam drifted from rooftop ventilation units into the cold Ohio air. Yet Sean knew the day marked the beginning of a different chapter. Not because of the title printed on his identification badge, because the responsibility now extended beyond repairing equipment. He was responsible for rebuilding trust. At 7 o'clock, he gathered every maintenance supervisor inside the operations conference room. No catered breakfast waited on the table. No polished executive presentation filled the screen. Only a whiteboard, a notebook, and a printed agenda. Sean stood at the front of the room. I appreciate everyone coming. The supervisors settled into their chairs. Carl Jensen smiled. This feels different already. Sean nodded. It is. He wrote 3 words on the whiteboard. Safety, accuracy, accountability. These are our priorities. He looked around the room. If a project isn't complete, we won't certify it. If documentation doesn't match reality, we correct it. If anyone pressures you to ignore either rule, you come directly to me. Nobody spoke for several seconds. Then one supervisor raised his hand. What if the request comes from an executive? Sean answered without hesitation. The answer stays the same. The room remained quiet. Not because anyone disagreed, because they realized he meant every word. Later that morning, Margaret Holloway visited the facilities department. For years, board members had rarely entered maintenance offices. Now she walked through every section. She greeted technicians by name whenever possible. Finally, she reached Sean's office. I wanted to congratulate you. Thank you. You've earned this. Sean appreciated the sentiment. I intend to justify the board's confidence. Margaret smiled. I believe you will. Before leaving, she paused. We've spent too many years measuring success only by quarterly reports. Sean listened. We forgot that organizations are built by people who quietly do the right thing every day. She looked around the maintenance workshop. I don't intend to forget that again. That afternoon, Rebecca Lawson called. I have news. Sean closed his office door. I'm listening. The prosecutors filed formal charges. Sean remained silent. Wire fraud. Conspiracy? Corporate records violations? She continued carefully. Gregory Bennett has entered a plea of not guilty. Sean expected nothing less. When is the first hearing? Several weeks. Rebecca paused. You probably won't testify immediately. I understand. But preserve every notebook. They're already secured. Rebecca smiled. I knew they would be. The weeks that followed unfolded more quietly than Sean had imagined. Television crews occasionally appeared outside Ridgewell. Business reporters requested interviews. The company declined everyone. Inside the campus, operations slowly returned to normal. Projects resumed. Budgets required additional signatures. Compliance reviews became routine. Employees gradually stopped whispering in hallways. Life moved forward. Not quickly, but steadily. Cora also began rebuilding her own life. She accepted an administrative position with a nonprofit community health organization across town. The salary was lower. The office was smaller. The prestige barely compared to Ridgewell. She accepted the offer anyway. Her first evening home, she handed Sean a copy of her employment letter. I wanted you to know. Sean read it carefully. It seems like honest work. She nodded. That's exactly why I accepted. No promises accompanied the conversation. No request for forgiveness. Only another quiet decision pointing in a better direction. One Saturday afternoon, Sean and Emma repaired the old wooden fence surrounding their backyard. Emma carefully measured each replacement board. Sean showed her how to keep every post perfectly level. She frowned in concentration. If it's crooked now, it'll stay crooked forever. Sean smiled. That's true for fences. Emma looked at him thoughtfully. And people? Sean considered the question. People can straighten themselves. It usually takes longer. Emma accepted that answer with the uncomplicated wisdom of an 11-year-old. Then we should help them. Sean looked toward the house where Cora was planting flowers along the porch. I think we should. Autumn arrived. Leaves covered the Ridgewell campus. The criminal case continued moving through court. Sean rarely heard details. Rebecca intentionally shared only information that affected him directly. One afternoon, she visited his office carrying a single folder. The defense reviewed your notes, Sean looked up, and they challenged almost everyone else's recollections. She smiled slightly. They didn't challenge yours. Why? Because every entry included dates, times, locations, observed facts. No opinions. She closed the folder. Your discipline protected your credibility. Sean remembered the first day she had instructed him to separate evidence from emotion. Only now did he fully understand how important that advice had been. Several months later, Detective Michael Foster invited Sean to lunch. Not in an office, not over case files. Just lunch. A quiet diner overlooking the Scioto River. Michael stirred his coffee. The trial won't last much longer. Sean nodded. You've been busy. So have you. Michael smiled. I heard employee satisfaction numbers improved. Sean laughed softly. I didn't know detectives followed maintenance statistics. I follow outcomes. Michael leaned back. Buildings are being repaired. People trust the process again. That's not an accident. Sean appreciated the compliment. Michael became more serious. You know something. What? When we first met, I assumed you were another angry husband. Sean waited. I was wrong. You became the most reliable witness in the investigation. Sean answered quietly. I was just trying to do my job. Michael nodded. Exactly. Winter arrived with the first heavy snowfall. One evening, Sean drove home through quiet Columbus streets, Christmas lights reflected across fresh snow. Inside the house, Emma sat wrapping presents for classmates. Cora prepared dinner. The atmosphere still carried scars. Trust had not magically returned. Some conversations remained difficult. Some silences remained painful. Healing Sean had earned followed no calendar. Yet something undeniable had changed. Nobody inside the house was pretending anymore. Truth, however uncomfortable, had replaced illusion. That alone made the home feel lighter. A few days before Christmas, Sean received another email from Human Resources. This one contained no temporary language. Following completion of the board's organizational review, your appointment as Director of Facilities Operations is hereby confirmed. Congratulations. Sean quietly closed the message. He did not print it. He did not frame it. Instead, he walked through the maintenance department thanking technicians who had worked beside him for years. Carl shook his hand. Told you. Sean smiled. We all earned this. No. Carl laughed. You earned it. Sean disagreed. No building stays standing because of one person. Everyone returned to work. That answer sounded exactly like Sean. On Christmas Eve, after Emma had gone to bed, Sean and Cora stood together on the back porch. Snow covered the yard. Neither spoke for a long time. Finally, Cora broke the silence. I used to think success meant being close to powerful people. Sean listened. I know better now. She looked toward him. I don't know what our future looks like, Sean answered honestly. Neither do I. But we're telling the truth. Yes. And that's a better place to begin than where we were. Tears filled her eyes again. This time they were different, not driven by panic or guilt, only quiet understanding. Sean looked across the peaceful neighborhood. Months earlier, one sentence overheard outside a conference room had shattered his world. He could still hear it clearly. He would probably always remember it. But that sentence no longer defined the rest of his life. Choices did. Thousands of small choices. To remain calm, to preserve evidence, to protect the truth, to place integrity above revenge. Those choices had led him here, not to a perfect ending. Life rarely offered such things. Instead, they had led him to something far more durable. A daughter who still admired him, colleagues who trusted him, a career rebuilt on honesty rather than influence, and the quiet certainty that no matter how painful the journey had been, he had never once needed to become someone else, in order to overcome the people who have. Life rarely changes because of one dramatic moment. More often it changes through the quiet choices we make after everything falls apart. Betrayal may break your heart, lies may steal your peace, and injustice may test your faith. But none of those things can define your future unless you allow them to. True strength is not found in revenge, anger, or proving others wrong. It is found in choosing integrity when no one is watching, patience when every emotion tells you to react, and courage when telling the truth comes with a cost. Trust once broken is difficult to rebuild, but character is built one honest decision at a time. In the end, titles fade, money disappears, and power changes hands. What remains is the legacy of how you treated others and whether you stayed true to your values even during life's darkest seasons. If this story touched your heart or reminded you that honesty and perseverance will always outlast deception, then its message has already found its purpose. If this story moved you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What lesson stayed with you the most, and what would you have done in Sean's place? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy inspiring stories about resilience, justice, and the strength